a toaster.
Councilmember Huizar is thankful to his constituents for helping to make this event a success and to help celebrate the seniors.
Businesses throughout my district pitch in to make this event possible. It's a lot of heart in this room when you come celebrate this event each and every year.
It's wonderful for seniors because that forces us out when we would be sitting at home doing nothing.
The seniors danced the night away in appreciation. I'm Cindy San Luis for LA This Week.
Members from 22 senior clubs located in downtown's Little Tokyo community, as well as Boyle Heights, El Sereno, and Northeast Los Angeles, attended the event. In this week's list of things to do, former photographers from a bygone LA newspaper discuss their old photographs, free tax prep assistance, and an exhibit on African American soldiers in the Civil War. When the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner newspaper folded after publishing its last issue on November 2nd, 1989, the staff photographers moved on and the images were donated to the Los Angeles Public Library. Now, 23 years later, the LA Central Library at 630 West 5th Street downtown is hosting a reunion of former Herald-Examiner photographers on Saturday, March 9th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. The photographers will recall their time on the Herald-Examiner and share some of their favorite photos. The event is free and open to the public. Reservations are not required. Doors open at 1:45 p.m. For more information, go to events.lapl.org. Council District 12 is offering free tax preparation assistance at the district's Community Service Center on 2 consecutive Fridays, March 8th and the 15th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Community Service Center is located at 9207 Oakdale Avenue in Chatsworth. Appointments are required and you must bring certain documents. For more information or to schedule your appointment, call 818-882-1212. Commemorating the 150th anniversary of the American Civil War, the California African American Museum is debuting an exhibit on Sunday, March 10th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. that features remarkable photographic portraits of African American soldiers and sailors who took part in this epic chapter of our nation's history. The exhibit, which will run through mid-April, will feature large format reproductions of original antique photographs housed at the Library of Congress in Washington. The California African American Museum is located at 600 State Drive in Exposition Park. More details can be found by going to caamuseum.org. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. Who says it doesn't snow in Los Angeles? Some animals at the LA Zoo got their winter wonderland as the zoo celebrated its annual snow days at the zoo.
What a monkey.
Children fixated as they press their faces into the fence. It's not every day their favorite animals decide to come out of hiding to frolic within eyeshot of their adoring fans. And it could be all because of the snow.
What's really awesome about the snow today is normally the animals are asleep and you can't really see them, but because there's snow, the animals are excited, and so it's fun to see them playing in the snow.
The bear is normally hiding somewhere sleeping. Maybe if you're lucky, he'll be up at the top and you can get to see his backside or just a little patch of fur. But today he's so excited about the snow that he's out and he's rolling around, and I feel happy for him. I think he's glad for the snow. Maybe LA's a little hot for him sometimes.
The Snow Days at the LA Zoo is a 2-day weekend event held annually at the zoo to give some of the zoo's cold weather residents their own winter wonderland. This year, the American black bear, the Sumatran tigers, and the seals had their habitats transformed into a snowy playground. And zoogoers loved it just as much as the animals.
We decided to come down to the zoo since we have a pass, and we happened to come along Snow Days, and it's perfect, wonderful. Weather is nice, not too hot, the animals all out, and good to see the bear and the snow. It looks very, very cool.
And with the animals out in plain view, zoogoers could not resist snapping rare photos of their favorite animals strolling, eating, and just enjoying a snow day under the bright LA skies.
You don't get a chance to see these animals in your daily life, so just to have such close contact with animals from all over the world it's an eye-opening experience.
Besides the winter habitats, kids and their families also enjoyed a photo op and a meet and greet with the Snow Princess and her wintry friends at the Snow Days event. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
This is my daughter Miranda, and we live in Silver Lake. We love the cultural diversity of Los Angeles. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel.
Good morning. Today's date is March 6th. Could we have some quiet, please? I want to welcome you to your Los Angeles City Council. We meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Mr. Clerk, we do not have a quorum as of yet, so I think we should begin with a presentation by Mr. Mitchell Englander. Mr. Englander, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of the toughest presentations I think I've actually done as a council member. I don't know what the slideshow is, but it's not mine. That's where I was born.
Why don't you give us a minute? There we are.
Thank you. Today, we're losing one of our own. Matt
Quiet,
Meyerhoff.
please, let's be respectful.
Matt Meyerhoff, our communications director, known in the office as the Hoff, is leaving the office after 7 years. Started with Greg, and he has been far beyond just a staff member. He's been far beyond just a communications director, far beyond a friend. Matt has been family. And what he has brought not only to our office, but to our residents, to the city of Los Angeles, he's created and reached out to organizations to develop relationships, created those and nourished them through so many different efforts. This is a dear friend who it's hard to see him go. He's actually got a terrific opportunity that he's going to be joining LA Inc. So he'll be staying at least arm's reach within the city family. But it's not the same. And I truly feel that people are not expendable. And when you've developed working relationships with folks who you admire and trust and look up to, it's really hard to. Thank you. Parting is sweet sorrow. But we wish Matt the best in his endeavors. He is truly just an incredible human being. I would love to read this resolution about Matt into the record. You all have a copy of it. I'm not going to get, it's very, very detailed and very lengthy, but it's worth reading. There are words in here that I can't read publicly, just simply because I cannot pronounce them. But there's a lot of descriptive adjectives about Matt, and this was written with love from the entire staff. And it says a lot about his character. This is a guy who not only has done so much for us internally, but so much for the entire city. And so it is an honor and a privilege to call Matt a friend, to wish him great luck in his endeavors, to know that our door is always open to our family member, and that we love you very much and wish you the best. So congratulations. God bless you. Thank you.
Excuse me. Try not to get choked up here, which is hard to do with this group of people. So I'll try to make it quick, but I can't really put into words how educational and fun and rewarding it's been to work not just for the City of LA, but for the City Council, and especially for Council District 12, which probably most of you already know is a really special place where everyone who works there is a member of the family. We're all really close. We're all close friends. And one of the things that makes it easier to leave is knowing that we'll all stay friends. So I'll be back often, probably too often. So I just want to thank Mitch, as well as former Councilman Smith, for giving me the amazing opportunity to come in and work here and welcoming me, even though I was the token liberal. That was always good for a lot of laughs. And it's also been a real pleasure working with every single person down here in City Council as well in City Hall, because there are just so many interesting and smart and professional and talented people. It's just really a great place to be. But mostly I will miss my CD12 family, who I love very much. So thanks to all of you guys.
And good luck to you as well. My staff is like family as well. I know it's difficult for you, but you're ending one chapter, beginning another, and we all wish you the best.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say and close, if I could. We all know that while it's our name on the door, only simply because it was our name on the ballot, we're only as good as our staff. You are only as good as your staff. Make no mistake. That's with every department. That's with every organization. It's particularly important, and it's with every elected official, that these are the ones that make you look good or not. These are the ones that help you succeed or not. These are the ones that deliver for your district or not. These are the ones that make a difference in the city, that create the vision and see things through implementation. When you've got a great communications director that knows how to express what you're feeling and your vision, that knows how to communicate with your constituents and your businesses, that knows how to develop all of those efforts that are so important. And perhaps that's why I'm out of words, because he's leaving. He's taking them with him. That we all have to acknowledge how important and critical staff is. And when you have good staff, when you have great staff, there's nothing like it. And Matt has been by far one of the best staff members that I've had the privilege of working with. So thank you very much for all of your time. I'll hold this up right here.
Hey, Matt, leave Mitchell a few words, okay? Just very few words. And again, congratulations. Mr. Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Could you please call the roll?
Alarcon, Buscaino, England, Garcetti, Weezer, Carrasco, Corrigan, LaBonte, Fox, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zine, Wesson, 10 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, first order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Perry moves, Reyes seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Krikorian moves, Weezer seconds. Next.
Mr. President, there is a request from member to continue item 1 to March 19, item 11 to June 4th, and to refer item 10 to the Public Safety Committee.
Okay, without objection. And that brings us where?
That brings us to items 1 through 3. They're items noticed for public hearing.
No, I thought we just continued item 1.
We did, sir. That's items 2 through 3 in this section.
Do we have cards?
Yes, sir, we do. We have cards on both 2 and 3.
Okay, then let's hold both of those items. Let's move to the next section. I believe it's items 4 through 21.
That is correct, sir. Items 4 through 21 are items for which public hearings have not been held. Please be advised that the community impact statement for item 11 should read against proposal. And I am told that we should hold item 5 for a city attorney report that will be circulated shortly.
Okay, let's hold item 5. Members, specials? Specials members, Mr. Parks?
May I have 18 and 19?
Mr. Parks is requesting 18 and 19, so let's hold that. Members, other specials?
Yes.
Mr. Krikorian?
12 and 13, please.
12 and 13 for Mr. Krikorian. 12. Mr. Krikorian, you were 12 and 13, right?
Sorry?
12 and 13 for you? Okay, Mr. Weezer?
Good.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on the remaining items. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, let's go on. Yes, Mr. Laban.
Yeah, forthwith on 14, 15, 16, and 17. Please.
Without objection. In fact, I've just been informed by the city attorney that everything should be forthwith today. So if we could go to items 22 through 48.
Yes, sir. Those are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, those items are now before us. Mr. Englander?
Item 37, held special on the desk for Mr. Buscaino.
Okay, let's hold 37. Mr. Huizar?
39.
39. Let's hold that as well. Cards, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. We have cards on items 24, 26, 27, 28, 30, 36, 37, 39, 41, and 46.
Okay, let's hold those items, and now let's prepare to vote on the remaining items. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
All righty, we're on what? Items 49 through 51?
Yes, sir. Those are items scheduled for closed session. Would you like to hold them on the desk?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Item 49 is payment of a judgment, and the Budget and Finance Committee recommends approval of the recommendations, and that can be done in open session unless members have questions. Item 50, I'd like to ask to be...
Mr. Parks, I think, wants to hold 49. Yes, go ahead.
Item 50, I'd like to ask to be continued. Do we have a date? For 2 weeks, please.
Without objection.
And item 51 is the posting of a bond on a judgment. Budget and Finance also recommends approval, which can be done in open session as well.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Clerk, let's move on items 50 and 51.
Mr. President, 50 was continued to March 20th without objection,
51.
sir. Very good. Item 51, in the case entitled Valerie Allen versus City of Los Angeles, there is a recommendation to expend $3,760,657.29 in order to deposit the amount into the U.S. District Court while the matter is being appealed.
Okay, let's prepare to vote. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, are there any more items on the agenda?
Just one matter scheduled for a special meeting.
And which item is that?
That would be item 52. It is scheduled for a special meeting. Would you like to recess the regular and go into the special?
Okay, why don't we just hold it? We'll get to it. Okay? All right.
Mr. President, that takes council back to items called special or public comment for items not on council's agenda.
Okay, I want to take a moment, I'll call it President's privilege, to congratulate every candidate that ran for office yesterday. They showed courage and bravery. When you run for office, you put yourself before the public eye. So they should all be congratulated for their courage. I also want to congratulate the members who have moved on to the final phase of the campaign, which will take place in May. So I think they're deserving congratulations as well. And we need to, I think, give a special acknowledgement to the individuals that outright won last night. We have one of them with us today with a big lift by Mr. Rosendahl. We have with us Council Member to be Mike Bonin. Let's give him a round of applause. And Felipe Fuentes has won as well. And Bob Blumenfeld has won. Members, for a lot of us, Proposition A did not work out the way that we had hoped that it would. And what that does, it makes our job that much more challenging. But it has always been such an honor to serve with each and every one of you. I have no doubt, no question, that we will do whatever is necessary to put the city's fiscal house in order. It's a serious problem, and we will address it that way. Now, we should begin having discussions on a variety of areas moving forward, especially where it relates to turnout. 16%. I think that sends a message to us, and I think and I hope that the voters realize that it should send a message to them as well. We need to look at maybe consolidating our elections with the state. We have to bring those turnout numbers have to be higher. But again, somehow, some way, we will get this done. Those of you that are on the budget committee, I respect your ability, and we'll move forward together. We'll have discussions with our CAO, our mayor, police chief, and we will make the tough decisions that we have to make. With that said, let's go to work, guys. The sky didn't fall, and it's not the end of the world, and there's probably 15 billion people in China that don't even know we had an election. So let's take care of the business that the people of this city hired us to do. Okay. Let's go to, is item 2, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. That's item 2, called special for cards.
Samuel, I think it's Thrice. Samuel, please come forward. Go right ahead, sir.
Good morning. My name is Samuel Trice. I'm a certified public accountant practicing in Los Angeles, and I have represented Teddy Randall through the review process with the Office of Finance. The Office of Finance wants to file a lien against my client and for unpaid taxes. The problem that we have here, we don't have due process. The City of Los Angeles has not filed suit to confirm the proposed assessment. So we're saying you can't file a lien until you have a judgment, and the judgment and we haven't had any court action.
Are you finished, Mr.
That's it.
Right. Okay.
We oppose the lien filing.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item number 3, called special for cards.
Okay, we have 2 cards on this, Bob Anderson and Antonia Ramirez. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Bob Anderson from the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. Sherman Oaks strongly supports the resolution and urges the council to pass it on agenda item 13. Sherman Oaks is one of many helicopter noise hotspots in Los Angeles.
We're on item 3.
You
Mr.
called my
Anderson.
name. I said,
oh, you know what? You were misfiled. So that's my mistake.
I kind of wondered why I was up here.
They put 13 and 3.
Okay.
So if you just sit tight for a minute, I will call your name again.
Good. Don't take my 26 seconds away.
You'll get a fresh start. Okay. Ms. Ramirez?
I'm sorry, what number is it?
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Ms. Ramirez, your item 13 was placed in item 3. So we're off to a rocky start. So then there are no. So we do have the two items, cards on 3, which would be Wayne from Encino and John Walsh, HollywoodHighland.org. Please come forward.
And Mr. President, motion
Mr. Walsh
3A.
passes.
Motion 3A has been circulated and is now before council for consideration.
Okay, but let's get Mr. Wayne from Encino.
I'll pass. I'll wait to see what happens.
Okay. On item 3, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote. Mr. Bonin is up here straightening out our card situation, so I put him to work a few months earlier.
And for the record, there's
10 ayes.
Item 3A has been circulated if the motion has been received. Yeah, thank you. Technical matter.
Yeah, so next item, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk, next item.
That brings us to item number 5. I am told that the city attorney report has been circulated.
Okay, we have a card on that one. Mr. Spindler, do you want to please come forward?
"47 law firms on the list. Why do we need 47 law firms? How do you get these 47 law firms? How did they get on this list? All that work and all that money. City's broke. Every city you analyze, you can go on online, city of Milwaukee, city of Detroit's bankrupt. You can have a law firm, but why do we have to have 47 law firms without competitive bidding on these various lawsuits that could be taken as maybe be a retainer basis without an hourly rate? Instead, we're giving these law firms, which are 47 of them, exclusivity to charge the city as much as they want. And we already have a city attorney's office with a budget of $78 million. So when Carmen Tutanich ran 4 years ago, he said he took care of that he went into the city attorney's office and that he created a situation where he reorganized the law firm, as he called it, so that we don't have to hire outside law firms for every single case that comes before city business. But here we have these 47 law firms. Where is Carmen Tutanich? Where is the city attorney? Why isn't he here right now talking about the no need to have this? This is millions of dollars of money we can't afford. The Prop A, it just failed. So we don't have extra money to be paying 47 law firms $200 million a year to represent the city on supposed conflicts. You have to vote no on this. The city just doesn't have the money for it. Thank you.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to respond briefly to the Speaker, this is a conflicts panel. These are law firms that must be hired because the city, in those situations where the city attorney's office has a conflict. So they are required by the laws of California and of professional conduct to retain a outside counsel to serve because of conflicts. It's not just because they want to hire outside lawyers. So that the Speaker is just wrong about that. On this matter, Mr. President, the Office of the City Attorney has provided a revised report which has been circulated on item 5 on the agenda. The revised report makes only one change to delete one of the previously recommended firms due to a conflict and includes the same recommendations made by the CAO and by the Budget and Finance Committee. I therefore move that the Council adopt the recommendations contained in City Attorney Report number R13-0065 dated March 6, 2013.
Thank you for that, Mr. Krikorian, and that will be the order. Can we Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you.
And for clarification, that is with the revised city attorney report recommendations.
Okay, now the next item.
That brings us to item number 12, called special for Councilmember Krikorian.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. This council has been actively engaged in trying to find ways to address gun violence throughout this city. We have been a national leader in that cause for many, many years and are continuing to do so now. Right now, there's a bill pending in the California State Legislature, AB 202, which the Los Angeles Police Department, among others, have expressed grave concern about. This is a bill that would allow and encourage loaded firearms to be installed in classrooms throughout Los Angeles and California. And members, I just think that especially in light of the recent tragedies that we've seen at Sandy Hook Elementary and elsewhere, encouraging and allowing loaded firearms to be installed in classrooms throughout our city is the wrong way to go. And so I would respectfully ask for your aye vote in this resolution opposing AB 202.
Thank you, Councilmember. Our next speaker, Councilman Englander.
Yes, thank you very much. As a chair of public safety, as a reserve LAPD officer, as a father, I couldn't sit by and not speak on this item, and wanted to thank Mr. Krikorian for bringing this forward. We've seen a lot of crazy things come out of Sacramento. This is about the dumbest piece of legislation I've ever seen in my life. This is just stupid. I'm just calling it what it is. I mean, this is ridiculous that anybody would think giving guns to teachers and bringing them into classrooms would make our children safer. I join with you and support opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Seeing no one else on the queue, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that we move on.
That brings us to item number 13, called special for Councilmember Krikorian.
Okay, we do have a couple of cards on this item.
Cards, yeah.
Okay. So we have Bob Anderson and Antonio Ramirez.
I'll try again here. I'm Bob Anderson from the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. SOHA strongly supports the resolution and urges the council to pass it. Sherman Oaks is one of many helicopter hot noise spots in Los Angeles. I'm chair of SOHA's Helicopter Noise Committee. I receive hundreds of helicopter noise complaints every month. We've been working to reduce noise from non-emergency and non-governmental helicopters. In 2011 and 2012, we worked with Congressman Berman's office on H.R. 2677 and his August 2012 public hearing. We worked with Congressman Schiff's office as they drafted H.R. 456, which is the House legislation complementary to Senate's S208. We're working with other community groups from across the county to reduce helicopter noise. In December 2012, 12 individuals from these groups met with the FAA as part of their current study on helicopter noise. We provided 16 recommendations for reducing helicopter noise. The FAA will complete their important study in May of this year and release a report. We're anxiously awaiting their recommendations. Our groups have also started meeting with helicopter pilots to help foster voluntary noise reductions in Los Angeles. Community members, pilots, and FAA representatives attended our initial meeting in February. It was a forum to explain helicopter noise to each other, open lines of communication, and foster working together. But our key finding is that although there are thousands of helicopter noise complaints in this city, there is no centralized, easy-to-use system to collect and analyze the complaints. Therefore, SOHA and other concerned community and helicopter groups have begun working together to determine how and when such a complaint system could be implemented. This will not solve the overall helicopter noise problem in LA, but will go a long way to truly understanding the problem and developing long-term solutions. Thank you very much.
We say kick-ass chopper pilots, let them rip. Dianne Feinstein, Paul Krikorian, and Tom LaVange are viciously contemptuous, and we should pursue criminal sanctions against them for putting our chopper pilots in danger. Moreover, pilot safety is a priority. How dare you try to restrict these law enforcement, police, and sheriff's emergency crew pilots' every aerial movement. These pilots are flying at low altitude and facing extreme aerial and air power challenges such as weather changes, fires, fumes, heavy fog, flight of birds, volcanic ash, torrential rains, mechanical problems, heavy wind shears, and heavy gusty winds. And our Michelle and Barack Obama are in town and the airspace is closed or restricted. These courageous, brilliant, and hot mama pilots are not only our eyes and ears, but also our brains, for they have to be knowledgeable and very well versed in the FAA rules and all ad nauseum air regulations, which are endless. Hence, these chopper law enforcement pilots are our city and county's greatest valuable asset in the skies, for they are famously efficient and zealously public safety guardians. Therefore, leave them alone, for we will fight and protect all our pilots, and they should be put on the New York Stock Exchange because they are a valuable commodity. So having said that, Dianne Feinstein, Paul Krikorian, and Tom LaVange, why don't you do your real job, and that is go after these damn gangbangers who are toxic and noisy and an urban blight. And having said that, most of our chopper pilots are military. Hoorah-rah. So again, we need more pilots up in the skies, and give them to the military. And again, God bless our pilots, our military, and all these wonderful pilots who bring a flow of commerce and increased tourism into the city. God bless our Gillespie Daredevil pilots extraordinaire and our commercial big mamas and all the other pilots. God bless you. Thank you so much, and kick ass. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You going to speak to this, Tommy?
No, I just said
Councilman Krikorian.
offended by her last words. But, Mr. President, I was offended by her last words. She could say anything she wants about me, but her last words, I think, offended those who may be watching this.
Thank you for that. There is a issue of decorum, but you're right. There's a First Amendment rights to speech. It's unfortunate some folks don't understand the notion of respect. Please, go ahead. Thank you, Councilman Krikorian.
Mr. President, I just wanted to respond briefly to some of the incorrect implications that were raised by the last speaker. What's before you already excludes law enforcement, military, emergency, and public utilities purposes. So none of those things have anything to do with the proposal that's before you. The proposal that's before you is essential to the quality of life of the people of Los Angeles, who again and again have their peace and quiet in their homes and their neighborhoods destroyed by low-flying, hovering helicopters. In some of our neighborhoods, these helicopters, that are hired by paparazzi or tour agencies sit there over our neighborhoods for 30 minutes or longer, just hovering in one place. So it's about time that the federal government stepped up and dealt with this, continuing problem that's destroying the quality of life in places like Sherman Oaks, and Bob was here to speak about that, and in so many other places in our city. And this city council should stand in support of the efforts by Congressman Schiff, Senator Feinstein, and others to try to address this problem. So the report that's before you stands in support of those efforts to regulate low-flying helicopters. But again, the support is contingent on those measures being amended to provide that helicopter operations undertaken for emergency, law enforcement, public utilities, and military purposes be exempted from that. So those concerns just simply aren't valid. I'd respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Councilor LaVange.
Yeah, thank you very much for especially Mr. Krikorian calling out utilities. DWP has flights all the time checking our transmission lines, and we also know the fire and police. And even last night in our neighborhood, LA City General Services were flying ballots from far distance of the city through the valley to Piper Tech. I just want to take a moment to salute LAPD Air Support Lieutenant. If you could just thank you for all your service. You're here with Commander Williams. Air Support is always with us, and also those who are the Fire Corps, the Fire Department, do an excellent job. Mr. Krikorian, your leadership here is outstanding. We thank the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, the Neighborhood Association, everyone who's been concerned, George from Beechwood Canyon, and all others. It makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing no one else on the queue, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That motion passes.
Mr. President, we do have 12 members now. Would you like to reconsider the ordinances that have passed already? If so, those would be items 22, 23, and 31.
Yes, let's reconsider those. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, now that's
those matters are now before you, sir.
Right. No one on the queue. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those ordinances pass.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 24, called Special for Cards.
Okay. Two cards on this item, Arnold Sachs and John Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. This is regarding Palmdale. So I was just wondering, because Lawa owns property in Palmdale, I believe, and this is city-owned real property within the unincorporated territory in the city of Palmdale, County of Los Angeles. Regarding Palmdale Airport, which was another item on item 17, because it refers back to that. It mentions that this is Los Angeles World Airport Holdings. Does that mean Los Angeles World Airport owns Palmdale Airport property? Because we have that problem with Ontario Airport. Your files, when you go online to the city and you check, it mentions that Ontario Airport is city-owned. But when Gina Marie Lindsay was in council chambers about 2 months ago, she mentioned that it's owned by Lawa. But again, your files mention that the City of Ontario transferred title to the City of Los Angeles. So here you have Los Angeles Airport Land Holdings, and in item 24, you're talking about the City of Los Angeles. Now, although they both contain the name Los Angeles, they are in fact two different agencies. One's a city, and one's a proprietary agency. And so, is this another situation where the city has paid for property, and then somehow or other it's ended up with a proprietary agency, and yet the city, the people that live in the city, are held accountable for the structural deficit of paying for the bonds that paid for the property?
Thank you very much. John Walsh. He'll pass. Item 24. Seeing no one on the queue, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That matter passes. Let's move on to the next item.
That brings us to item 26, called Special for Cards.
Daniel Jones and John Walsh.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Jones. I'm in favor of this item because the funding for the police department for the city of Los Angeles is the responsibility of the people of the city of Los Angeles and not the Department of Homeland Security. And I'm going to prove to everybody out there in LA Live TV why it's... Can I please have some quiet, please? Thank you. Corporal, how much of your paycheck is subsidized by the Department of Homeland Security? Bus Chop, how about yours? Squirt, that police officer, he's a Department of Homeland Security officer too. You have cops in every single school, subsidized by the Department of Homeland Security funding. Do you think that might be a judicial coup? All the funding for every single law enforcement agency in the United States is being funded by the Department of Homeland Security. Why? So they can buy it. One of these days, this corporal's going to walk in the store with 51% of his paycheck paid for by the Department of Homeland Security, and he's going to say, fuck you,
Hey,
to every single...
sir, you are now out of decorum. That's your first warning, sir.
No, actually, he has caused a disruption, Mr. President, and if you want to request that the sergeants escort him out, you could do that.
Please, let's escort. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, in addition, would you ask Kenny to see if there was any damage to the microphone and also remind speakers that they can't hurt the equipment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. You don't get angry when you win, you smirk. This is what a smirk looks like. Okay, we'll talk about that under public comment. John Walsh, go to the front page online for yesterday's blog.com. This concerns the LAPD. Well, they're in bad shape, and because of the Prop A vote yesterday, a smashing victory for no on Prop A. Now, they claim that they can't even come and rescue us. They don't have the money. They're
Mr. President, this is
closing down.
not about this item.
And what this says is the Internet Crime Against Children Grant Award. Well, I think this grant award for them should be going, if they can't administer this grant because they are firing people because of Prop A failing, I don't think they should do it. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay. Seeing no one else on the queue, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Next item.
Mr. President, that brings us to item 18, called Special for Councilmember Parks.
Okay, and I just want to take a moment to congratulate Joe Buscaino for his victory before we begin our discussion. Congratulations, Joe. Congratulations. Give a big round of applause, yes? Well deserved. Okay. Okay. So we are now on item 18. We do have, let's see, no cards on this item. So, Councilor Weezar, are we ready?
Yes.
Item 18.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. First, I want to thank all the supporters of the streetcar who are here today knowing we haven't opened a public hearing, but I appreciate your support all the way to get here. And colleagues, this is a very important item for the city as a whole. You know, 500,000 people come to downtown Los Angeles each and every day to work. And we know that we have to do something to improve the transportation system as more people begin to call downtown home. 10 years ago, we had 10,000 people who lived downtown. Today, about 50,000, and it's going to expand even further. We see it in New York and Chicago, where people are coming to live the urban lifestyle even more so, and it's going to happen here in Los Angeles. What we have before us is a commitment of Measure R funds, local return funds, to ensure that we operate the streetcar. The people in downtown Los Angeles voted to assess themselves to come up with about half of the money to build the streetcar. I, along with others, are going to Washington, D.C. next week to lobby for the other half. So we essentially will get a project constructed that's free for the city. All we need to come up with is the operational dollars. And as we come up with those operational dollars, we will realize that we have so many things in return that would pay back those few dollars we're giving and Measure R local return dollars. For example, an AECOM study said that with the streetcar, we will have about $25 million in addition each and every year with the streetcar from tourism. Secondly, we will add about $47 million to our general fund in about a 25-year time span, and it will create 9,000 jobs. So as we commit about $6 million, we're asking for $6 million a year from Local R return money, which is about 15% of the total Measure R return monies. We're going to have quite a bit of return as we move forward. Colleagues, this is something that does not tap any committed Measure R projects that we have. This is simply allocating from the unprogrammed, untapped revenues that we haven't allocated. So these are dollars that we haven't allocated. We're making that commitment today if we so choose to move down this road. I would ask that we do. All major cities in this country are currently looking at streetcars. Los Angeles is known right now for being a vision city in terms of looking at new transportation projects. This would certainly add to the circulation in downtown Los Angeles. I would ask for your aye vote. And we have the Department of Transportation here along with the CAO who could answer any questions on this item. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. We do have several folks on the queue. And colleagues 18 and 19 are basically the same umbrella type subjects, so we can take 18 and 19 together. So we have next on the queue, Councilmember Parks.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think on looking at this issue that there's several things that are concerning. I think the committee report highlights a lot of red flags. Initially, when this was proposed to the council, it was proposed as a cost neutral. Now we're asking for $300 million over the next 30 years of Measure R money that should be directed to transportation issues within each district. Also, when we look at this as citywide funding, you end up with funding one project of approximately 3-mile rail car, while depriving the other districts of a variety of activities that they may have. It also commits the city for all cost overruns on the construction, because even though there was a voting recently by the public to assume some responsibility, and then there's funding they're seeking at the federal level, the city is responsible for all cost overruns on construction. There could be and possibly would be a general fund impact if sales tax had a shortfall over the next 20 or 30 years. In fact, in the committee report on page 2, the last sentence, it actually says that that they have the ability to substitute another local fund. The only one I can think of would be the general fund. The other issue we need to look at is Measure R ends in 23 years, but the project commits the city for 30 years, so that's 7 years beyond the commitment of Measure R. The operational costs, which we've seen in both Prop C and Prop A, are the least predictable. They're the most difficult to restrain, and because the volatility of personnel costs and fuel costs makes them an issue in which we recently had to reconfigure Prop A and C because we were in deficit spending. It also requires a change in the existing council policy that allows...
Councilor Parks, if I may, I'll hold your time. There's way too many conversations in the audience on the side. We can't hear Councilor Parks. If you please bring down your voices or take your conversations outside. Out of respect to Councilor Parks. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you. Also, it requires the council to change its existing policy on allowing only 10% of Measure R funds to be spent on non-infrastructure allocations. Also, when we look forward, the other issue that needs to be considered before we move forward on this is the MTA connector will be implemented within the next couple of years, and we need to know the impact of that connector before we begin to add other services, particularly when the city carries the entire cost of the operation of this system.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Councilor Labange, followed by Councilor Englander.
I'm going to switch. Mr. Englander wanted to go first.
He's against it, I'm for.
Colleagues, I couldn't agree more that I think the streetcar is a phenomenal asset to Los Angeles. It's going to bring a lot of visitors and tourists. It's certainly going to create the mobility we need to be the city of the next generation. It's something that we have to do, and I support Mr. Huizar's passion for this as well as his vision and leadership, and particularly the property owners that decided to put in a special tax on themselves to do that as well. One of the concerns I have, though, on this is the Measure R funds are a depleting revenue stream, particularly on infrastructure, where we've just lost in its sunset Prop 1B funds. Prop 1B funds, just so you know, that was a $20 billion infrastructure bond by the state of California. The local return on the $20 billion was $2 billion. That $2 billion was for every city and county in Los Angeles. Of our share over 4 years on 1B, it was about $140 million. That is now sunset and gone. ARA funds for street improvements and infrastructure are gone. We have 8,700 miles of failed streets in the city of Los Angeles. That's the size of Oakland 3 times. Of our 28,000 lane miles, about 32% are in failed condition. So without any additional revenue streams and depleting funds for infrastructure, we've got to look at what is coming in very carefully. On Measure R funds, that's the only thing right now. And we haven't had a report on this, on exactly what it means to the city, to all of our infrastructure. And so I would ask your support, and we continue to support Mr. Huizar. I think we need to look at this. But as Mr. Parks pointed out, there clearly could be as well a general fund impact on this as well. This has not gone to the Budget Committee, and I think it needs to be vetted from that perspective. So I would ask if I can get a second to send this to the Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Parks, thank you very much, so we can get a report back from our CAO and actually look at the real numbers, because we're talking about real dollars, but not hold up the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon me, for clarification, on which item or both, sir?
Just on item 18.
Very good.
Fine with 19.
Okay.
I'm sorry? Yeah, you can't move 19 without 18, so it'd have to be together. But 19 is just the MOU, but that's fine.
All right.
Both of them.
Councilor Labange.
Momentum is extremely important in anything that we do in life, and the business community put it on themselves to tax them. The councilman of the district has worked ferociously for this, to revitalize it, and I think it's an investment worth going forward now, based on the commitment that the local community did to say they're going to tax themselves. If we were standing out there all alone and just saying this is something that I would want to do in my district, but I have no backing from my district, I would say, hey, Mitch has got the right idea. But right now, momentum is so key to this. And in other cities as well, there's parallel transit that is success. Because someone could say, well, Hill Street or Spring or Main or the Compass, or what are we going to do as we energize? I will defer to the councilman of the district, but I support the momentum that has been made with the investment that the community leadership has said they're taxing themselves. So there's that part, that component. And is this hard dollars that could be, if there's something that derails this, what could be saved or recouped or not spent? I just don't want to lose the momentum that the community, and the community has consistently come to say that we want this here, and Mr. Huizar has done. The only thing I've articulated every time is they look to the system in Bordeaux, France, which does not have overhead wires, that does have power in the street, that comes off in a different way, that does not challenge the beauty of Broadway. And I ask anybody today or tomorrow, if they have an opportunity, get on a bus or in a convertible car and look at Broadway and how beautiful it is. This will help transform that street again to the great way that it is in Broadway. So, Mr. Huizar, I want your direction on this, but I think momentum is key as you brought the community together. The community doesn't want to wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, I concur with Councilmember Labange. When I started on the council in 1993, I could not have imagined the kind of transformation that we have seen downtown. And that transformation at every step of the way came with exactly the kind of opposition that you're hearing today. Nevertheless, we met those challenges and we produced a very vibrant downtown area. And nobody knows better than Ms. Perry that in fact we have done something that most of us thought was impossible. And even though we were making those decisions, we still were concerned that moving forward could cause problems. It could whatever the projects were could go belly up. But in fact, there was a tremendous resurgence downtown. I think we need to continue that resurgence, and I think this project is one that would provide an element to Los Angeles that harkens back to the day when my dad rode the Red Line from the San Fernando Valley to the downtown area. And that history is important. We have to learn from the lessons of the past, that we had a very adequate and sufficient transportation system back in the 20s and the 30s, and we lost it because we made the wrong kinds of investments, the wrong kinds of decisions. I think this is good for a lot of reasons, not only in terms of the ridership issue, but also in terms of developing a culture for the city of Los Angeles that illuminates some of the errors that we made in the past and brings us back to a day where we're making decisions for the right reasons. Obviously, we want to scrutinize this project from an economic perspective, but that doesn't mean that we are unwilling to invest a little bit extra in projects that provide greater benefits. I believe this project is one, and I support Councilman Huizar.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I do believe we had asked for this to go to Budget and Finance, and we determined that because of Measure R dollars, it's not general fund dollars. And secondly, our CAO and Department of Transportation has reviewed this for months now. They've been coming to the Transportation Committee. They made presentations. Transportation Committee brought it out. Nearly unanimous, and so we want to make sure that we move forward with this momentum because time is critical. I'm going to Washington, D.C. now to compete with a number of other cities that are lobbying at a streetcar conference for federal dollars to help us with the second half of the construction dollars. I need to be able to go there next week and say we have the operational dollars, we have the environmental complete, we have half of the construction dollars, and that will put us on the top of the list to get an additional $60 million. People, we are leveraging a small amount of dollars to get humongous benefits for the city. We shouldn't see this as a downtown project. We shouldn't see this as something that's going to just simply affect one district. In return, if you look at the dollars that I mentioned that will come into the general fund budget, we're not taking anything out, that's huge. I mean, I don't see how this is really a no-brainer for us to move out. So I would ask that we do not support Englander's motion to send this committee. We've offered to take it there. The staff of the chair of that committee said we don't need to bring it to Budget and Finance, just go straight to Council. We're here today. The momentum is there. If I go to D.C. next week and we get that the Council wasn't supportive, it's not going to help our cause. And D.C. pays attention to how the city councils and the mayor is being supportive of these types of projects. We've waited for today so that before next week we could go to D.C. and lobby. Again, doesn't have an impact to the general fund. I want to dispel that. Second, we've offered to take it Budget and Finance, but we brought it directly here at the request of the staff of the chair. And this is $6 million out of a $35 million allocation each and every year. And it's unallocated. These monies are going to go somewhere. Why not here when it has huge benefits and return on our dollars?
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jose, I met with the business folks downtown and discussed this matter with them, and they were very clear that they voted to support this. They voted with their pocketbook to support this, and they were willing to put that effort forward to improve the transportation in downtown. And I can remember as a child those rail cars that used to be downtown on those main corridors where we have a lot of shopping. So I support the measure. As you mentioned, this was offered to go to Budget, and Budget said wave it through and come to Council. So if we go back to Budget and have a discussion there, your time in Washington, I understand, starts next week. And if it does not pass this, it's going to be difficult for you to sell it to them. As you mentioned, it's not going to cost any general fund. The money's coming out of additional allocation, hopefully Washington. If Washington doesn't come through with anything, where do we go from there? If you could answer that. If Washington decides that they don't want to fund it, do you have a backup, or do we have assurance they're going to fund it?
Yeah, if Washington decides not to fund it this year, it's an annual application process, so we will go back next year. But that would affect our timeline that we have here if we don't move forward this year. So we would have to go back another year, and we would lose a year.
Could we start without that from Washington?
No, we cannot start without the money from Washington.
So until we get the agreement from Washington, so the assurance is no impact on the general fund, Washington provides that, then we can move the project forward, and we'll do it in increments in addition to the taxes that will be coming from the property owners.
And we also would not be able to receive the local tax assessment if we do not have operational dollars in place. So we're leveraging that as well. Those dollars would not be available to us where the voters decided to vote for themselves, 73%, that they would pay for half of the construction. Those dollars would not be available for us if we don't come up with the operational dollars.
And that was 73%?
Voted yes for this for about $60, $80 million.
Of the property owners.
Property owners are willing to pay for that. This is a true public-private partnership. We always talk about these. It's right in our lap. We would lose a huge opportunity if we don't do this.
I support it. I'm voting for it, and I commend you on the effort that you put forward to bring it to the table, to have the effort that's taken place to bring it to this point.
Thanks.
Mr. Reyes.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. I rise to support this, and when you look at the context of this discussion, I think we need to put in perspective how this work has evolved over time. When you look at how Councilor Perry was able to promote the adaptive reuse and take it to a place where now you have the type of leveraging scenario that is tremendous. And if you look at one of the reports, if the CAO or the CLA like to come to the table, you do have additive value, and I'm quoting, to downtown in the form of $1.1 billion in additional development, $24.5 million in additional annual tourism spending, $47 million in additional revenue to the City of Los Angeles over 25 years, and more than 9,000 jobs above and beyond what will happen downtown without a streetcar. So without a streetcar, now imagine with a streetcar, how we can add to this leveraging potential. So the CAO, CLA, who's working on this project, like to come to the table? DOT, who's here? When we look at the concerns of how we can pay for this over 25 years or 23 years or 7 years left, I forget what was quoted. Isn't it possible we can get reports back that talk about how we can address these shortfalls with other types of policies that will offer us to offset those costs, given the revenue that can be produced in the future?
Maria Susan Roundtree with the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office. Yes, we can come back periodically, and through the annual budget process, we would be doing that as well. I mean, it's important to remember that this is only a portion of the available uncommitted Measure R funds that we would be using for the streetcar. So there is funding available for it, and there will be funding as well for other projects.
So to be very thorough, it's not like if we're just voting on something and not having an answer to the deficits or the shortfalls. We have the tools in place to assess our progress, to look at revenue streams coming in and isolate funds to pay off future debt should we have those gaps.
Yes.
So there is a solution to these problems.
Yes.
So the question here, Body, is the will. Do we have the will to continue the momentum that has been so eloquently stated before in making sure that this portion of downtown LA gets a chance to bring back the glory it once was? There's a family called the Dillajonis, and they invested in some amazing theaters under the stewardship of then Mayor Tom Bradley. And this family maintained these theaters. They are glorious. They kept them up, but they are dying because we don't have the pedestrian flow to make them as viable as they could be. This streetcar will create that stream of pedestrians, stream of revenue, and so we need to be able to acknowledge that this city given our current budget situation, needs to advance in a very creative way and start allowing for a new flow to come in and change the culture we've had in the past, where we are stagnant in how we look at our coffers. We need to create this type of energy. It is a stimulant, and we need to support this. So I stand to support Councilman Huizar. Thank you.
Mr. Englander.
Yes, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Zine, Mr. Alarcon, I too stand with you to support Mr. Huizar in this. Absolutely right. Mr. Labange, we got to continue this momentum. This is a great project. I'm absolutely in support of this. There's no question. I think what the arguments that you all are making is, one, the saying, let's continue the momentum, let's move this forward. We can't stop this thing. We've got to secure it. The voters have already spoken in this particular area. Those aren't my questions. That's not my concern. I'm right there with you. Great speech. I absolutely agree. That's not the issue. The issue I have is that we just ask to look at the financial reports and what we're putting ourselves on the hook with, and is that the best decision? Is that what the voters intended on Measure R? Because that wasn't part of it on Measure R. So we've identified a revenue stream for infrastructure, but I'll tell you right now, go back to your district and find out also, because once you take it out of one pot, you're removing that to put it into another pot of funds, and what we're taking out of is also infrastructure. So it's not a matter of what's more important or not. I think we have to fight and continue to make sure that we put this project in place. That's no question. I think we also have to look at the financials. What's before us is a tremendous obligation financially that we haven't vetted, that the chair, rightfully so, of the committee, by the way, of the Budget and Finance Committee said, yes, there absolutely is no need for this to really go before budget because there doesn't appear to be a general fund impact. I agree with that. But I don't know that we were all with the understanding. I don't know that we all had the information that it was identified that we'd be taking such a large portion and committing Measure R funds, and what does that really mean to us? That doesn't mean there aren't other funds available. That doesn't mean we can't go to Washington, which I'll be there on Friday as well, meeting with a lot of folks on transportation, and say that this city is committed and we are moving forward and we're looking for additional partnerships. All those things can take place. All I'm asking is that we actually just look at the dollar amounts. I think that's what's gotten us into a lot of trouble in the city, is by not asking those financial questions and just saying it's a great project, we should move forward. Well, we should also look at the dollars that are being committed and ensure that we're protecting ourselves. We've got a fiduciary responsibility to do that, not just be cheerleaders and support good projects. We've got to do both. Thank you.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. I would just like to make a couple of comments. Is that if I were a downtown district, I would swear to all of you that's going to impact the entire city. Every one of you would get benefit of it. But in reality, it's a 3-mile length of rail. And what we have to look at is that there's no assurance, even after it's built, that you as a district outside of downtown are going to share in the revenue or what is produced. And so you lose twice. You lose the Prop R money that's going to use to build it or to operate it, and you lose if you don't get your fair share of what's produced by the project. I think also we've hopefully learned our lesson in Prop C and Prop A, when we found that operational costs went way beyond the means of those funds. We've all lost dash services, we've lost pothole services, we've lost street maintenance. And now the only fund that's available to dealing with transportation, Measure R, we're going to commit over $300 million over the next 30 years, even though the fund stops generating money 7 years short of that. And so those are the reasons I think that whatever committee it goes to, we have to be assured that we have access to Measure R money as long as it's producing. The other part of it is, I think any business person in the city would buy into this if I were going to be responsible for a one-time cost of a half to 2/3 of a system, and you were going to take the responsibility for 30 years to operate it. Any business person would vote for that. And I think the issue is, it's not unlike many of the grants we've been involved with, where someone gives us a little bit of money and we spend a lot of money and then wonder later why we accepted that grant. So I would suggest that we not commit the Measure R money for this length of time, that we look for other funds, and yes, we need to keep the momentum going with what we've created as a policy for Measure R is just as important for the whole city. The kinds of things people have been talking about that there's lacking in their community. This will tie up Measure R money to where every district will suffer and not have the ability to deal with their priorities.
Okay, Mr. Weezer, I'm going to try to have you go last, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So I'd like to go to Mr. Reyes now, at this time.
Thank you, Councilman. Getting back to this notion of a report back, the Community Facilities District is funded by the property owners. They've assessed themselves a significant number. We all want to make sure that Measure R is flexible enough to address the needs of the whole city. Could we get a report back on an annual basis of revenue that's generated through this streetcar, structure this report so that the funds that come out of this program, out of this project, could be prioritized so that less money from Measure R is used? If we can look at a list of funding sources where the Community Facilities District is actually generating the resources it is generating, it could generate, then perhaps we could assess how we use Measure R. Can we structure a report back of that nature on an annual basis?
Yes.
So that would take away from this notion of less will be available for other parts of the city. And could it be crafted in a way where we can have that understanding? Yes. Okay. So colleagues, there is a way to move forward. There's a way to prioritize this project. And there's also a way to address what Councilman Englander is saying, what I'm hearing from Councilman Parks, that we should not commit Measure R to the extent that it's being asked for if we have funds coming in to offset it annually. But the priority at this stage to make sure this project gets completed, to make sure it's functional, that's performing, that we leverage it so that the federal government can see that there is this local commitment. So, Councilman Huizar, this notion of the report back and looking at how we review the performance of this project, if there are increased funds that come to the area, whether through the Community Facilities District, however the CAO or the CLA propose, could we then look at, on an annual basis, how we would lessen our dependency on Measure R if there's other revenues coming in, and allow for that Measure R to be used in other places in the city?
That would be a friendly amendment that I would accept in the overall report, because in fact we are looking at different ways in which we will charge for parking in downtown, which in the future will bring in tremendous money to the general fund actually, and if that could be an additional revenue that instead could go to
operations.
I don't know. There's a lot of options out there.
Right.
So,
but they could. The CLA and the CAO can structure a report back that gets to the spirit of this intent.
Yeah, I mean, those dollars would go to the local SPRF, I think it's called. So.
Okay. That would be a friendly amendment.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Labange, and then Mr.
I just want to remind Mr. Parks, there's a thing called Momentum, the Crenshaw line, light rail, $10 million took off of Wilshire Boulevard. Didn't even ask me, but took it because it was good for the city, because you were skilled and crafty that you got it done. I like that, Bernard. That was important because Crenshaw is important to all of us, but Broadway is important to all of us, and all of us benefit. And I just wanted to stand, Maria, you figure this out. You're the transportation czar for the CLA. You got to make this happen, because this is what takes a great city to move forward. And there's opportunities in the future. I just want to say that is the key. All of us, we spend money in San Pedro. That's good, Joe, because it's good for the whole city. We spend money in the central part of the city, in the west, in the south, in the valley, all of it. But I just didn't want to remark on that, Mr. Parks, because I appreciate your skill. But that $10 million helped the momentum of Crenshaw get to where it was today. And there were more potholes on Wilshire that we didn't get to fix until we finally got some more money to fix it. So I got it, but this is real important to, I think, the center of the city, which connects us all.
Mr. Englander.
Yeah, I just wanted to close with one thing, and I know that you're going to close, but my closing thoughts. I think we all agree that this is really important. I think we're all supportive, and again, I just don't understand the arguments over the momentum and keeping it going. It's all very important. We all agree. We support this project. And a delay of a couple weeks to get the report back, ask the types of questions rather than going back on the floor right now with things that are going to commit us up to 30 years or $300 million to negotiate or come up with compromises of what those annual reports would be. The devil's in the details. Those are the critical questions we should be asking if we're going to commit to this kind of financial obligation for this type of time period. A couple weeks out of a 30, 40, a 50-year project that's going to go way beyond our lifetime. I think it's the right thing to do. I think that's why we're here. It's not just to say, well, just because you want to ask questions doesn't mean you're supportive. Is a mistake. And I think we should get away from that, quite frankly, because it looks like we're against each other, that we're not supportive of each other's projects, that we're not all in this together, that it may or may not benefit one particular district, that we may spend money, whether it's in the Valley or San Pedro or downtown. That's not the issue. We're all in this together. And I think the comments that are saying that this stalls things or puts it off or we were not committed to the project is a mistake because it's just wrong. The fact is, these are huge dollar amounts that these are the kinds of questions we should be asking. And to go to committee and come up with good language that we all support, quite frankly, and make responsible, informed decisions. I mean, I'd ask any one of you, how many of you, if I had to do a show of hands and are ready to vote on this commitment, actually read, not your staff, but read the CAO report on this? Those are the kind of questions I think we should ask. I see Mr. Parks raises both hands. He's read it 6 times. And if you did read the CAO report, you can ask these kind of questions. So a couple weeks to look at it in the context of a financial decision, not whether we support or oppose the project. The project's moving forward. Whether we can come up with better language, as Mr. Reyes suggested, as well, with those annual reviews or looking at other obligations or different funding mechanisms. That's what the committee structure is there for, and that's why I would support a yes vote, and then it comes back, and we all collectively sing Kumbaya and move forward on the project. Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
Question for Ms. Roundtree. What is the possibility of using special parking revenue funds instead to then free up Prop R money to be used on a citywide basis as it was intended?
We would have to change the ordinance for the SPRF and probably make some other, or undertake some analysis on the bonds and to see if that's
okay, because you know SPRF, I mean downtown tends to generate the greatest amount of parking revenue anyway. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, is that a viable option?
We'd have to do some more analysis. I don't know how much we could raise and what the implications would be for doing that. And again,
okay, well, I'll just put it out there for people's consideration.
Jim Lefton with the Department of Transportation. I just wanted to add that in preparing the report, LADOT, working with the CLA and CAO, did look at a number of funding sources, Prop A, Prop C, SPRF, in addition to Measure R and the general fund. The concern that we had with SPRF, in addition to the fact that we'd have to change the ordinance, as Maria mentioned, was that given current city practice in terms of moving any surplus funds to the general fund, we felt that that made that fund not as viable as Measure R, where a good amount of the money is still uncommitted. So we did look at all those funding sources and felt that Measure R was the appropriate source to use.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. I think, Jim, you just answered one of our questions, is that if we were using SPRF as it's intended instead of a budget gap, you might have that as a resource. But because we sweep it all into the budget to pay our bills, it's not used for the intended purpose. And that's the same path we're going down on Measure R. We're not using as its intended purpose for citywide impact to fund just a 3-mile rail in downtown LA, with the commitment that we're responsible for any cost overruns. We're committed for 30 years when the fund runs out in 23. And so there is a general fund impact. And what I would say to all of you, if we are going to be that benevolent today, I'd like to make a motion that we take $40 million out of Measure R and fund the Leimert Park stop on the rail line. Being that we're being benevolent and we don't care how we use it, let's add that to the pot, and so we can get our stop at Leimert Park that they've been promised, and that's only $40 million, a one-time cost. And I think the problem I have with this project is we have $150 million the business community is committed. We're looking for 40 in Washington. That's a one-time cost. And for there on, they're saying run it at your expense and run it at the most volatile part of it, which is operational cost. We should not take on that responsibility, particularly when we're siphoning the money off citywide. But again, if we're going to do that with this benevolence, then please let me get in line so I can make sure we get a $40 million tab, which is way less than the 300. And I can guarantee you the Leimert Park stop has a citywide impact because people will be coming to South LA using it all the way to the airport. So let's all jump in and get our projects in. And let me just, if we're going to approve that, let me just make a motion that we take another $40 million.
Second. You want a second?
Yeah.
You want a second?
Yeah.
I think you'll get several seconds for that motion, Mr. Parks. Mr. Alacon.
Yeah, but I said amendment to that
To Labange. Okay, Mr. Alacon.
If you're holding me to the end.
I think this is the last one. I think. Mr. Alacon. Wait, no, it's not.
I do want to hear...
I got another speaker.
I'd be happy to consider Mr. Parks' recommendation with regard to the $40 million. I've never heard it, and I don't know that we have the same level of activity that Mr. Huizar has put behind this project in terms of community involvement. But I think it's important that on the one hand that we be fiscally conscientious and we pay attention to the CAO. We also have to consider the other issues. When you talk about benevolence, we got to talk about job creation in the city. We've got to talk about stimulating this economy. The CAO is focused on financial issues relative to our budget, but sometimes that is not the whole picture about what is good for Los Angeles. We need to create positive messages in Los Angeles to stimulate investment. This project will stimulate investment. So beyond the CAO report are all those other kinds of benefits that accrue to the city of Los Angeles by doing these kinds of projects. I support this project because I think all those things will happen. I believe it will create jobs. I believe it will improve our transportation system. I believe it will stimulate investment in the downtown area, and that's exactly what we need to generate the kinds of revenues to keep this city whole for many years to come. But we cannot be short thinking and only look at the financial impacts specific to our budget. There are much greater issues at stake here, and I believe Mr. Huizar has tapped into something when he has a mission and a desire to improve Broadway. I think Broadway sends a powerful message to the rest of LA and the investment community in the world that we are coming back. And if we don't do these kinds of projects, we're sending the exact opposite message that we're not coming back. We're not going to take chances. We're not going to take risks. If we are not willing to take risk, we are not willing to improve Los Angeles.
Okay, Ms. Perry, and then maybe Mr. Huizar.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on the record and second Mr. Park's motion, and I think a rail system on Crenshaw with a Leimert Park stop will not only have citywide implications, but virtually guarantee an economic development to take people in a seamless way to the airport, but to increase our travel and tourism in other parts of the city. And so I just want to make sure that I go on record in a way that everybody can hear me.
Mr. City Attorney, you wanted to respond?
Yes, the Leimert Park matter is not agendized on today's agenda, so perhaps a separate motion would be a better way to approach that matter.
Miss.
Like as a Rule 16 motion or as a motion that's...
Do we have to write it?
That would be preferable.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you,
Mr. President, and hopefully we close this out with these comments. We've spoken a lot, and some comments have been made that there's been no financial analysis or financial reports. CAO, CLA, and the Department of Transportation have prepared this report that we heard in Transportation Committee, that the chair of Transportation Committee, we asked a lot of the same questions as we did here. We have thoroughly reviewed this. We looked at alternatives such as SPRF, Measure A, C, all of those, and we found that this was the one that made better sense. And at the end of the day, we're going to have $650 million left in unallocated funds. That's still a healthy unallocated fund. And we've already allocated for a number of projects. So when we say, or someone says that every district will suffer, that's not true, because we've already allocated local Measure R dollars through our procedures to a number of projects throughout the city for a number of districts. And so this is now saying, and now we're going to allocate this portion of it, and we'll believe that $6 million out of about $35 million a year is not bad given the significant economic returns we will get. We are leveraging, folks, about $125 million in construction dollars if we give these Measure R dollars. We are leveraging about $45 million to the general fund in increased sales tax and property tax. We are leveraging 9,000 new jobs. That's incredible. I mean, like Mr. Alarcon said, this should be a no-brainer to not only do it for its economic sense, but to send a strong message that the City of LA is innovative, it's creative, it's investing in the future, and its public infrastructure. I understand some of the concerns that our council members may have. At the end of the day, you know, whether it's Englanders, more information, we have that, we vetted that, we've talked about that. Whether it's Mr. Parks, that what about my district? It's part of the Measure R process, and there shouldn't be a problem with us here in Leimert Park and whether that makes sense or not. And put that in as a motion, as another agenda. We'll discuss it another day if it makes sense. But at this time, whether you're concerned about your district, that shouldn't even be a concern at all. Whether you're concerned about information and vetting and make sure we're doing the right type of investment, we have a report that's been vetted for months now through the committee process. And all the information is there. Our staff has done a wonderful job. Our local community wants to be assessed and is willing to put in their own money, their own skin in the game. I need to go next week to D.C. and saying the full council's behind me in moving forward with the streetcar. Because if I go next week and say we didn't move on the operational dollars, it's going to set us back, and we'll probably get to the end of the pile of other cities who are going to be flaunting that they are ahead of the game of providing a modern public streetcar in their streets, which has proven to be successful. Why do you think every city wants one? Folks, this is so important for the city. We shouldn't lose this opportunity. I ask you to vote no on Englander's motion to send it to committee, and yes on the report from CLA, CAO, and the Department of Transportation.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, do we take up Mr. Englander's motion first?
Yes, sir. First, the motion to refer this matter to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, and Mr. Weezar's asking for a no vote. Mr. Englander's asking for a yes vote. Okay, Madam Clerk, let's open the roll.
Ooh.
Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 8 noes.
Okay, now we're voting on Mr. Weezar's. No, it's not his motion.
For clarification, sir, we're voting for items 18 and 19 on the Transportation Committee reports. They do include Councilmember Reyes's friendly amendment regarding the CLA and CAO report back.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, let's on this item, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay. Can we adjourn or recess this meeting and go into the special meeting and take up item 52, I believe it is?
Yes, sir, we can.
No, Ms. Ramirez, we are not adjourning the meeting. We're recessing it. We're going to take up a special meeting item, and then we will return to the regular meeting. So you will be afforded your opportunity to speak.
Alarcon, Buscaino, Englander, Garcetti, Weezer, Carras, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zion, Wesson. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, on this measure, I have John Walsh, HollywoodHighland.org, and Mr. Arno Sachs. If you two gentlemen could please come forward. Arnold Sachs, John Walsh.
And Mr. President, for clarification, this is an item for which a public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, this item is now before us. Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh. For immediate blogging, you go to thefrontpageonline.com for the immediate blogging for today. You played a game on us and said, if Prop A fails, you're going to start cutting.
Let's stay to the subject. Let's stay on the subject.
This is why you lost.
This is stay exactly on the subject. Mr. Walsh, please.
This takes money away from the police and gives it for an extra day at Griffith Park Observatory. So you are now saying you're going to reduce the police force by 500 people, and yet you're going to increase the time at Griffith Park Observatory by 20%. It's these kinds of lies. That's why 55% of the people who voted were on our side. Maybe the people who sat home were on your side. I'm sorry. If you're going to take our fire away from us and you're going to take our police away from us, you're damn not. We don't give a damn about another day in Griffith Park. This is what you're doing. Plenty of money to their friends, and they threatened us and tried to intimidate us. We stood up to them, and we beat them on Prop A.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs. Mr. Arnold Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. Again, one of my all-time favorite items, AB 1290 funds. AB 1290 funds, for the public's perception, is money that's returned to the city that comes from CRA money that was sent to the state. The AB 1290 funds come back to the city council for the council members to do it as they please. Understand the two different paths. You have redevelopment funding, you have AB 1290 funding. And the reason I bring that up is if you had listened to the previous conversation, you would have heard talks about Measure R. What you didn't hear in the previous conversation is the city's only allocated 15% local return Measure R funds, not Measure R funds per se. As Mr. Wesson wished for with his sales tax initiative, you find out that Measure R, which is a half-cent sales tax passed by the county residents and the city residents, would raise $215 million. Do the math. All the city gets out of that $215 million is a 15% local return to spend as it wishes. The rest of Measure R fundings goes to Metro. They're the ones who put together projects. I am discussing the language here, sir, and I will have a comment on you also later, but that's different. Anyway, you heard a great discussion from all the city council members. Not one of them mentioned local return Measure R funding.
Okay.
Keep that in mind when you
stay on the observatory, Mr. Sachs, please.
Listen to some of the discussions that your city council members make. There's a definite splitting of the...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, can we adjourn this meeting and return to the previous meeting?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, that brings us to item 27 called Special for Cards.
Okay, do you have to call the roll?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, 27, Antonia Ramirez, and John Walsh, HollywoodHighland.org. Item 27.
19 public comments.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
Did you do number 19 public comments? Because I didn't get to speak on number 19. That's what I was trying to bring.
Oh, what happened on item 19, and I had stepped away. That was the public comment was satisfied in committee. Therefore, there's no requirement that it be brought up. So number 19, the public comment was satisfied in committee. Now we have item 27. And you're free to speak on that one.
Do you mind if I speak on number 19, even though you didn't clarify that? I mean, I think you would have the courtesy of telling us that you were not going to discuss.
But the rules,
the rules also say to communicate everything effectively so that all of us can hear and adjust to whatever the changes are. I think it's only fair. I mean, we live in a civilized democracy.
I hear you, but that rule has been on the books forever. And when you go through the agenda, when you see things that are satisfied, or that you should be able to tell with things have already been satisfied.
Well, I can't pick your brain, but I think it's only courteous.
What I'm telling you now is that they heard public comment in committee. So we will not hear comment on 19 right now. We are on item 27, and you see I didn't even start your clock, so you can speak on item 27.
Most of you council members and LA city attorneys, along with the LAPD chief Charlie Beck, should have been fired long time ago. When it comes to public safety, you are truly deplorable. We taxpayers are putting out heavy payments for graffiti apprehension rewards, when clearly if you and the LAPD had done your crime prevention jobs from the get-go, we wouldn't have these over 11 million criminals and crimes in our cities. But you know why we haven't eradicated these graffiti, vandalism, burglary problems? It's because 99.9% of our LAPD and law enforcement agencies and cops are gangbangers in uniform. We have an epidemic of Latino violent gangbangers and criminal illegal felons who are committing these crimes on a daily basis. Take Rampart, for instance. God, shut them down and get them out.
Get back to the graffiti.
The graffiti, sir, we have graffiti all over the city. It is embarrassing. It is sad to see such a beautiful city with beautiful sky rises from the 20s and 30s trashed. It hurts to see these beautiful buildings that people work for a few cents a month to erect. And look what we have done to them now. This is truly deplorable. Even though Broadway is disgusting, it's a cesspool of squalor filth, but the buildings are immaculately and destroyed. How sad, and I as a Mexican American feel embarrassed that you are having these wetbacks and gangbangers trash the city. So I am embarrassed because I was taught never to defame the city.
She should be talking about the item at 12162 San Fernando Road.
Everything you respect, you don't touch it, you didn't destroy it, and you don't damage it. And look what we have done to LA. That's embarrassing. Thank you.
Ms. Ramirez. Mr. Walsh, your turn.
John Walsh, to be clear, my real name is Hector Lopez. I'm a wetback. I swam across, and everything I'm doing here is phony. There is no John Walsh. I just learned to talk like a white man. My name is Hector Lopez. HollywoodHighlands.org or the front page online. What you see here, if you think they're not listening to me, if you've been here before, I said that you are not.
John.
I am talking about the rewards. I said you never bring the rewards here. And you can go and look. Prior to today, there have been virtually no rewards. Now, because I brought the issue up, you can see this is a $1,000 graffiti apprehension, $1,000 graffiti apprehension, and we want to know, were those graffiti artists, were they found guilty? And I just want you to know, the whole reward system is out of control. HollywoodHighlands.org. My name is Hector Lopez.
Mr. City Attorney or City Clerk, is that information posted anywhere where it relates to how successful we are on our rewards or what have you? I would think that would be public, or could somebody look into that and let me know? Okay, would you please? Okay, Mr. Clerk, where are we now?
We've concluded public comment for item 27 and are awaiting a vote, sir.
So let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That was smooth, Mr. Clerk, how you saved me on that one. Mr. Walsh, do you want to speak on item 28? Okay, so Mr. Walsh, In fact, today I'm going to call you Hector. Hector passes. If we could, there are no more speakers on the queue. If we could open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That brings us where, Mr. Clerk?
Item 30, called special for cards.
Item 30. Is Wayne still here, Mr. Spindler? I don't see him. So anyway, let's vote on this item. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
All right, what item are we on now?
What item are we on?
We're checking to...
Oh,
well, that brings us to 36 for cards. Item 36 called special for cards.
I'm going to ask for reconsideration on item 30. So then we're going to have a vote on reconsideration on item 30. I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh, your card's kind of stuck. And when I grabbed it, didn't come out. So John Walsh, a.k.a. Oh, let me.
Hector.
Okay, Hector, let me vote on reconsideration. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
John Walsh, a.k.a. Hector.
Yes. And I got no green card neither. I don't need no green card. Okay, let's say on this again, you have told us that you are now forced to remove 500 LAPD officers. We heard Charlie Beck in that commercial. I'm a white cop and you're not going to see us anymore on the street. Okay, now here, what are you doing? You are buying 3 police dogs. So let me tell you what they're doing here. They're getting rid of people, LAPD officers, and they are bringing in dogs. In fact, the new plan is to send out 2 dogs instead of 2 cops. They're going to be working together as the LAPD and the City Council become the laughing stock of the entire United States. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, let's prepare to vote. Let's open the roll, Madam Clerk. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Mr. Clerk, where are we?
Mr. President, that brings us to item 36 called special for cards.
Okay, I have Mr. Arnold Sachs on this item, and that's the only card. Mr. Sachs, welcome back.
Yes, thank you. One quick minute. My question regarding this item, it mentions Time Warner Cable Pacific West Licensed Liability Company doing business as Time Warner Cable. Well, that just doesn't make sense. It's not listed as a DBA. With those initials, is it registered in the county? Is it registered in Sacramento as a DBA? That Time Warner Cable is a DBA of Time Warner Cable Pacific West Licensed Liability Corporation? I doubt it. Maybe it is. But don't the people in the city have the right to know who they're dealing with? Time Warner Cable just making millions of dollars buying the broadcasting rights or buying the broadcasting rights from the Lakers, and this is the kind of concealment of facts that drives City Council.
Thank you. Let's vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Mr. Clerk, I understand that we're waiting for some language where it relates to item 37.
Yes, sir.
So
that brings us to item 39, called special by Councilmember Huizar and for cards.
Okay, I have Mr. Sachs again. Mr. Sachs. Item 39, Mr. Sachs. One minute.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. This mentions that the HNTB Corporation, which has deep pockets in the city of LA, will provide final design and construction support services. Now, I'm sure that this project is a project labor agreement with the local unions. You know, Metro has a project labor agreement also with the local labor unions. But the thing about their agreement, it's only for Metro projects over $2.5 million that they're awarding construction contracts to. Will HNTB be responsible for any construction contracts? Because the Crenshaw line and the Expo line and the Foothill extension are all governed by construction authorities, which are independent authorities, which will do the bidding or release the bidding for those construction projects. Well, if they're independent of Metro, then they're not binded by the labor agreement.
Mr. President,
so
he
my
is not
question
talking about
would
this
be
item.
again,
Stay on the item,
Mr. City Attorney,
Mr. Sachs.
if the HNTB Corporation is putting out bids for construction, then the city doesn't have a pot as far as the labor agreement would be, because HNTB would not be bound by the city's labor agreement with unions. That is my point, Mr. City Attorney. And do you understand? Can you answer that question? Could you know that if HNTB is doing the construction bidding process or putting out bids on this project, and would the city therefore not be obligated with a project labor agreement?
Thank
Is that
you.
a yes?
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Sachs, your time is expired. Mr. Weezar.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, this is one of many steps that we are taking to reconstruct our beloved 6th Street Bridge, which is an iconic bridge in the city of Los Angeles. Today we are approving a contract to move forward with HNTB for the design of the bridge. But I thought it was worthwhile, because this is a very significant step, to bring this to your attention, to the public's attention, so that we could look at these designs and see what we're planning for the future of this beautiful bridge. Originally, as many of you heard, we looked at the bridge, and BOE recommended to my office and the mayor's office that we had to totally destroy the bridge and put up a new bridge. As a preservationist, I said, no, we cannot do that. It is a great bridge. It's a historical bridge. They brought in experts, and they all reconfirmed what BOE knew, which was that this is one of the most dangerous bridges in the city, should we not do something to reconstruct it, because of the materials that were used that are eating away at its own self, and it will eventually come down in a light earthquake. Secondly, after we determined that we had to move forward, I asked, well, let's reconstruct what's there. Let's get just redo a modern version of what's there now. But we determined to go forward with an international design competition and just put everything on the table, knowing that there's great potential and opportunity to reuse the river in ways that we haven't done so before. I want to thank Mr. Reyes for the work he's done on the river and some of the concepts and ideas that already have been planned through his efforts on that. So I thought we'd bring to your attention a short presentation by BOE on the bridge and the design. We have a short video, and this is one of the steps that's needed, but a very significant one. Is going to redo one of our bridges that's probably the most filmed spot next to, let's say, someplace, the Hollywood sign. People recognize it every time they see it, but we have a spectacular design, which I love because it touches the ground as it goes forward.
If I may, you're in a great place, but I want everyone to listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
You've got folks around you who are just, again, not listening to the speaker. Too many conversations on the sides. Please, folks, let's show some courtesy to our councilman in his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President. So I'll briefly, before we see the video, say that what this bridge does is not create a point of destination from point A to point P, but creates its own destination where people go out and see the beautiful views, bicycle, better pedestrian access, and that was as much of a priority as it was to get cars through, and it touches upon the ground through some of these arches for people to come up and down, which is, I thought, was very significant. So with that, if we could cue up the video, and then we will listen from BOE. Thank you.
sound, huh?
Well, at this point, you're looking down the LA River, and you see the power lines that the bridge design had to accommodate. Crossing rail infrastructure on both sides of the river. Now you're on the west side of the river in the Arts District. The bridge connects the Arts District with Boyle Heights. And you see over the river there's a suggestion of a kind of drop pedestrian. So that's the lower pedestrian crossing of the river.
Got graffiti and all.
The graffiti in the river doesn't reflect our aspirations for changes to the river in that stretch. But one of the things that you can see here is that there'll be a lot of area under the new bridge that it's proposed to be used as public open space. This is, in fact, a piece of infrastructure, as the council member said, that we hope has larger benefits to the community in terms of positive changes for the community at large. Then you see the bridge structure. There will be ways for the pedestrians to climb up to the bridge and cross the bridge at the arches. So pedestrians will have access, and then for some of the arches actually to climb to the top of the arches for a longer view. It's affectionately been described, the design, as a ribbon of arches that crosses from Boyle Heights to the Arts District and connects to the land below it, creating public open space. So, council members, I'm Deborah Weintraub, Chief Deputy City Engineer. We're here to ask for the council's approval to award a design contract to HNTB for the design of the 6th Street Viaduct. We issued an RFQ in April of 2012 and went through a three-step process to come to this point. It was an international request for proposals. We received 9 proposals. We shortlisted to 6, and the next phase of the selection was interviews with those 6. And then in a kind of unprecedented step for the city, we shortlisted to 3 firms and had them do a design competition that was presented to the community on both sides of the river. From that, we also involved a committee set up by the council member and the mayor's office, the Design Aesthetic Advisory Committee, and we had input and participation from our partners in the federal government who are funding the majority of the project. And we were unanimous in our choice for HNTB. So I'm here today to ask for the council's approval to execute that design contract. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We do have 2 persons on the queue. Are you done, Councilor Weezer? Okay. Councilor Labange?
Yeah, thank you very much. Deputy City Engineer Weintraub and the team, this is very exciting. I voted against taking down the 6th Street Bridge, but that's why they have another day. And another day when you see your work and your concept. Mr. Weezer, great leadership here. This concept of bringing it all together really makes sense. The one thing I would like to ask you, because several bridges, which history has, do reflect some need to recognize community. And on the historic end, if you would, as a friendly amendment, Mr. Weezer, at Boyle and 6th Street, look for recognition for our veterans. Many sons and daughters of East Los Angeles have crossed that bridge, have gone to San Pedro to ship out, or gone to LAX to ship out, and it would be great to have a memorial reflection of those who gave their ultimate price. So if we could, you've done this to other bridges, right, Ms. Weintraub? Yes. So if I could just have a second on that.
The report back on the viability of doing that. And in fact, Mr. Labange, we also in the process of applying for more federal funding for some of the additional amenities we want around the bridge. This is a lot of the concepts you see here, we still need to find the federal money to do the parks and the recreation areas. We could include that in some of those designs that we're getting for the bottom area of the
Is the historic gateway at Boyle and 6th, between that and the freeway, 101 freeway, being removed right now in your concepts? Or does it start once you go west of US 101.
We are going to be looking at that area. I can't tell you at this moment exactly.
Okay, so maybe you could look at to restore the old and give it some new.
Right.
And also, Mr. President, I know you second a motion today. We asked for the Department of Water Power, the Bureau of Engineering, the Bureau of Sanitation, and the Corps of Engineers to look at putting in check dams. The beautiful graphic that you had that showed the water when I clapped is an opportunity we can make happen. We can make happen with the check dam. DWP engineers developed, Ms. Cardenas as the CAO, want to know, DWP engineers developed a check dam up by the spreading basins in Griffith Park, past Travel Town, at one time. And in low flow days, which there's over 365 days a year, and it only rains about 40 days a year here, 40 days, 40 nights. Does that sound familiar to somebody? Anyway, we could do that and put water back in the river, and sanitation could sift off the debris so it doesn't go to Long Beach. I always want to apologize to the city of Long Beach for what happens to there. So you're going to look at all that as we go forward. But what a great, and the engineers, and they can walk on the bridge, right? You can walk on the top of the bridge, over the arcs. It's going to be a destination that will come close but not rival the observatory in Griffith Park, but it will be pretty darn good.
Thank you, Councilor Labange. Well, let our chief engineer, there are so many bridges you're working on, and I think you're being very modest. This is a beautiful, this is the jewel on the crown.
Thank you.
But how many bridges is the department actually engaged in? Do you have it off?
I believe it's around 30, 60. Oh, 60. I'm sorry, I'm corrected by my staff. Yeah.
You're working on 60 bridges.
Yeah.
And of those, how many are in construction?
14, he tells me.
14 in construction now. That's a lot of jobs.
Yes.
That's a lot of money for our local economy. And what I really appreciate in the design, Councilor Huizar, is that we're connecting the riverway so that in the future, when we are able to take that cement out, we'll have access to a beautiful set of amenities that could include a bike path, pedestrian paths. All that has been designed, or at least in the master plan, conceived as visions of the local communities. And this is one big step towards that direction. So congratulations.
Thank you. And Councilmember Reyes, we're actually rebuilding the tunnel that currently exists under the 6th Street Bridge, which will bring people down to the river's edge. And definitely the river master plan figures large in our thinking about this area.
So thank you, Councilor Huizar, for allowing that linkage, but more importantly, an amazing future for our city. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you indeed. The river was kept in mind as we move forward with the design. So last, I just want to thank the BOE team from Gary on down. You guys did a spectacular job, but I think the most spectacular job you've done so far in bringing us to this point is putting together the financing. It's not easy to go to the federal government, to the state, put in those applications, and make the case that in fact we should receive those millions of dollars to invest in Los Angeles. You guys did a spectacular job, very competitive. And when the whole country, when we see the infrastructure needs, we as a city should be doing more of this. To go out and fight for those dollars, to bring them to LA. We have aging infrastructure. We're excited about this achievement, but we have so much more to do with all the other bridges, all our infrastructure in great need, but this is a step in the right direction. So congratulations to you all, and congratulations to HNTB, who did a phenomenal job in design and went out to the community. And really, we had a number of community meetings and a local committee who advised us through the process. I want to thank them as well. So thank you so much. I look forward to the next step on this. I think we have one more step for our construction management, correct? Or our...
Yes, we do.
And then after that, we're ready to go. We're going to break ground when?
We hope to break ground on the bridge construction in 2015, but we may start construction on some of the street intersections sooner than that.
See, I knew that, but I just want to keep us all accountable by saying that publicly. Yeah. So thank you so much. And colleagues, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Okay, so let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Congratulations. So, Click, if we can go to the Rule 23.
Mr. President, that would be special number 2. It's motion Alarcon-Perry. I believe the city attorney will speak to the findings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the posting of today's agenda HACLA has reported on the impacts of federal sequestration and the continuing resolution on Section 8 programs and public housing, which include layoffs and reduction in services. There is an immediate need for HACLA to report this to Council and for Council to instruct the CLA to report on plans to mitigate the impacts. Due to the impending Council recess, Council would not be able to consider this matter until March 19th. Moreover, Council members attending the National League of Cities Conference are urged to participate with the League in efforts to reduce said impacts. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Okay, Mr. Alarcon, we have one public comment card. Okay, let's vote on the findings. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, so let's vote on, not vote, let me get the public comment. I think it's Ruth Swartz. Ruth Swartz filled out she had to leave. Okay, so with that said, Mr. Alarcon, it's yours. The public comment person has left.
Council members, the issue of sequestration came up in the Housing and Community Economic Development Committee as HACLA was presenting a report on the impacts of sequestration. And I felt, given their presentation, that it was important for Council members to understand the impacts. Now, this is relative to HACLA, but I've also asked the CLA and CAO to join in to make their brief comments on how sequestration is going to impact the City of Los Angeles. I also would add that the reason we did a Rule 23 is because I know several council members will be going to Washington, D.C. with the National League of Cities, and I think it's imperative that we send a very strong and unified and consistent message from the City of Los Angeles about resolution to the sequestration problem. So with that, we'll let HACLA take the lead.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. My name is Doug Guthrie. I'm the President and CEO of the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles. We did report out this morning to the HCD Committee, and we have provided members of City Council a letter from me dated February 22nd. I believe we also circulated copies again at this meeting outlining the impacts that we are now starting to feel as a result of the recent actions on both sequester as well as the continued battles over the budget in Washington, D.C. regarding the continuing resolution to fund the entire federal government. So there are really two important actions here I'll try to explain. The first one has to do with our regular budget for this year. We've been funded under the continuing resolution, which means that we're funded under the levels we were funded at in appropriations in 2012. What is an aberration here is that in 2012 there were one-time offsets to HUD's budget, both in public housing and Section 8. They're called budget anomalies, and those were always expected to be fixed going into the 2013 budget. As a result of this continual problem, they haven't been fixed, so we were already facing dramatic budget reductions in our operations just as a result of the regular budget process that Congress has been caught up in. In addition to this, last Friday, sequestration did take effect, and that also has a significant impact on us. So there are two areas that has an impact on us. One has to do with our operating budget. And again, this has continued to change on a regular basis over the last few weeks. It's been very fluid. But with the information that we have now, we're looking at a $9.9 million reduction in this year's operating budget for HACLA, which has significant impacts upon our ability to manage our programs, both in public housing and with Section 8. So we're starting to take some extraordinary steps which regard reducing our budget, the likely implementation of furloughs going forward for the year, as well as it will result in some degree of staff layoffs based upon the budget realities we have to face. Secondly, for the first time in the history of the Section 8 program, as a result of sequestration, we're seeing dramatic reductions in the subsidy dollars that we have to work with the current users of the Section 8 program. So we're going to have to, under sequestration, cut nearly $40 million out of the subsidies that are currently being provided. There are different ways that you can do that, and we're trying to do it in such a way that we don't actually have to take people off of the program. But as we're currently looking at this approach, it would appear we're going to have to reduce what we call the voucher payment standard. In other words, reduce the amount that we're able to pay under the Section 8 program to those that have tenant-based vouchers, and to reduce that on an average of over 10%. That will affect, in the coming months, an estimated 15,000 families that are currently receiving Section 8. It would effectively result in an increase of their portion of the rent by our estimate of about $200 per month for some of the poorest residents in the city. So this has dramatic impacts upon some of the poorest residents in Los Angeles. Housing authorities around the country are feeling this. It's not just Los Angeles, and sequestration really hurts the housing authority here than probably any other agency here in the city of Los Angeles. We wanted to make sure members of City Council are fully informed of the impacts of what's going on in Washington, D.C., and hopefully you'll carry that message forward as part of your visit to Washington, D.C. next week. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in that regard.
Mr. Miller, did you want to speak on this?
Just briefly, and then if you'd like, I'll turn it over to the CAO. The total impact on sequestration, the CAO estimates at about $115 million. There are a variety of areas. Mr. Guthrie mentioned HACLA. We've got housing issues, certainly block grant issues, as well as a potential direct general fund impact on discussions to limit or eliminate the tax exemption on municipal bonds. All of that is part of the sequester discussion. So if you'd like some more detail, I'll turn it over to Ben and Natalie.
Ben Seha with the CAO. The CAO's office prepared two separate reports related to sequestration, one released in January and one more recently. The report released in January did identify about $115 million worth of potential reductions in city programs. About 80% of those reductions, however, were within the housing area, most notably, as Mr. Guthrie presented, in public housing vouchers. And so the impacts you're hearing today from Mr. Guthrie do reflect about the majority of the impact that the city will face through sequestration. As far as the general fund is concerned, those impacts will be felt with regard to the tax-exempt bonds that may not be available going forward, as well as the policy decisions made by this council to backfill, if you will, any reductions made in any of the programs funded through the comp plan where sequestration reductions are felt, or in the housing program.
Thank you. Mr. Alarcon.
So, council members, I just wanted to reiterate, along with the CAO, in their reports, the importance of this issue. And for those of you that are going to Washington and will be meeting with Congress and other administration officials, that we urge you to prioritize this. In fact, I would move that we make the resolution to sequestration a priority in our talk points as we send our colleagues to Washington, D.C. with the National League of Cities. Do we have a second? Mr. Reyes, second.
Okay, let's vote on this now, members. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, I believe it was item 37.
That's right.
That was held special by Mr. Buscaino for an amendment. Has that amendment been circulated?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It is a motion, not an amending motion.
A motion,
but
okay.
A motion.
All right, so let's vote on this.
Mr. President, I believe there are cards for that matter as well.
I just discovered them. Okay. Skip Baldwin. Jesse Marquez. I think that's William Hall. Nancy Hall. So if you guys would please come forward. And if you don't have to be in order, just whoever gets up to the mic first speaks. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Is the mic on? Yes. My name is Skip Baldwin, Wilmington Citizens Committee. And when Janice Hahn came into office, she found out that the major problem in Wilmington was containers, shipping containers. And she gathered city agencies together. The lead agency was the planning department. She also had the building and safety and others, as myself and the community, plus the owners of existing container facilities. And this committee, after many months of study and so forth, got together and had a ordinance passed, a very simple ordinance, and it says that shipping containers must only be allowed in M3 heavy industrial areas. What we have before us here today is a case where they would like to put a container facility in an R3 residential area. And we don't want that to happen. We don't think it should happen. So what I did here very briefly, I took the zoning administrator's adjustment findings and made some notes of my own. And until my time runs out, I will address these. And she says here that the granting of an adjustment will be in conformance with the intent and purpose of the general plan. And I say no, this is an R3 zone. If container yard is approved, property cannot be developed as R3 housing. Container yards must be in an M3 use. A 2-block housing area will be lost. Housing is expected development in this area, not a container yard. It says again here, the granting of an adjustment in conformance with the spirit and the intent of the plan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, if you could just come forward and identify yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Jesse Marquez. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I graduated from Los Angeles City School, and I've been a lifetime resident. Wilmington has been my home all my life, but whenever I traveled as a young man and as an adult to other cities and communities, I was surprised and shocked that so many people knew about Wilmington. But their image of Wilmington and our community was not my little humble growing up image. We were just called a Mexican ghetto community. And it really hurt me all those years growing up knowing that, because when I went to Banning High School, I was very proud. I was on a city championship cross-country team. I was on a city championship track team. So I had a very good high value of the work in my community. We worked with Janice Hahn when she got elected to help improve our community regarding these truck container storage yards. When she came forward to City Council, I was happy to see all the City Council vote to give a one-year moratorium on these type of permits so that the city could look into it. And at the end of that 1 year, they found out that there was 31 container storage yards, 17 illegal. In our community plan, we desired a community to be set, an area to be set aside for future residential area. This property is in one of those areas. It's been zoned residential. The property owner has no rights. Yes, it was industrial in the past, but for over 3 years, it was vacant. So he lost any grandfathering type of requirements. We have worked closely with our City Council office for years now so that we can have this area designated for future residential growth. As you know, there's many districts that don't have space. Well, this is an area we've targeted to have that space, and we're asking you to support us in our appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Why don't we let Nancy go first? Ladies first. I'm assuming you're connected. Ms. Hall, welcome.
Yes, I'm one of the owners, and I brought pictures of the property. Please take a look at it because it's very convincing. If any of you visit 920 Eubank, you will immediately realize that there is no way homes for people can be built on this property. It is surrounded by industry on all sides, including a working oil derrick right across the street, and train tracks, active train tracks owned by BNSF immediately behind the property. Sue Chang, the Associate Zoning Administrator, has granted us 5 years only 5 years. And by her decision, the property has to be paved, landscaped with trees and automatic sprinklers. We have to have lighting. We even have to have a 24-hour hotline in case residents have a problem, so they can voice their problem immediately. Instead of a vacant lot that now exists, littered with trash and really human waste, this property will be productive, giving jobs and revenue to the people of the city and the city of Wilmington. Please give us 5 years to prove to you that we are good neighbors to the people of Wilmington. And please look at those pictures.
Thank you.
You will see.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. William Hall, please come forward.
Yes, my name is William Hall, and I'm the husband of Nancy Hall. And just a couple of things I wanted to say, that if we don't get the variance for this property, we're stuck, very seriously stuck. In other words, we can't do anything with the property. The property goes back into dormancy, and it becomes a vacant lot, encouraging graffiti, vandalism, vagrants coming onto the land, and it's happened many, many times. We've worked hard in preparation to make this land available to us and ensure that we will be good neighbors to the people of Wilmington. I have some miscellaneous points here that I'll read for the rest of my time. Many points have brought up against us, and one of them was the school issue. Schools are a non-issue in terms of using Eubank Street because the majority of the Wilmington schools are north of the property. They don't use the Wilmington thoroughfare for transporting their children. There's a 6,000-pound weight threshold on Eubank is a non-issue because they already allow it. The applicant, ourselves, we performed a truck and traffic flow analysis to substantiate this request. It showed there's really not any congestion of any sort on North Eubank. A noise study wasn't conducted. However, I did interview several individuals concerning the noise problem.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Or, as I heard last night, one of the news people referred to you as Jose.
Jose Buscaino. I'll take anything.
Buscaino.
Jose Buscaino, Giuseppe, Joe. I'm just proud and blessed to be here and humbled to serve. Steve, nonetheless. Colleagues, let me remind you where the community of Wilmington is. Wilmington is located just north of the Port of Los Angeles, and for years, as you heard from our residents have endured the negative consequences of heavy industrial operations in and around the port. In recent years, both the city and port have made great strides in working with the community to mitigate these consequences by enacting forward-thinking policy like the Clean Truck Program, as well as the building of the Wilmington Waterfront Park, along Harry Bridges, which creates a buffer between the port and the adjacent residential neighborhood. Residents have long advocated for the separation of heavy industrial uses from residential zones. It makes sense, doesn't it? Unfortunately, on February 5th of this year, the Harbor Area Planning Commission, by a 2-2 vote, upheld the decision by the zoning administrator, which would allow for an operation of a truck and container storage facility at 920 Eubank Avenue on a parcel zoned QRD3 residential. Let me repeat, residential. The location of this facility in such close proximity to homes will create increased truck traffic, noise, and pollution for residents in Wilmington. The action of the zoning administrator and the Area Planning Commission's decision to uphold it was a step in a wrong direction and is contrary to the efforts of the city and the port to improve the quality of life for those who live around this vital asset to trade and commerce. Colleagues, before you, I ask that you support an aye vote in approving this appeal of the zoning administrator's approval of the adjustment pursuant to Section 12.28 of the Municipal Code to allow a 1-foot front yard setback in lieu of the 15 feet otherwise required in the QRD3 1XL zone, and adopt the motion and findings supporting this appeal that have been circulated this morning. In addition, I'm just going to let you know that the variance on this issue will come before you sometime in April. So I ask your aye vote on what's before you, and let's be responsive to the community's concerns. Thank you.
Okay, there's no more back and forth. There are no speakers on the queue. When this is over, you can speak with Mr. Buscaino. But members, now I'm going to ask the Madam Clerk to open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
And, Mr. President, for clarification, that's 37A that was adopted.
Okay, let's move to item 41. And that I have cards on that. I have Mr. Walsh. And I have Arnold Sachs. Was he out of time? Yes. So Mr. Walsh is good. Okay, John, you have 2 minutes.
John Walsh,
Mr. Walsh,
Chairman Emeritus of No on Prop A, and still active in Anybody But Garcetti for Mayor.
Okay.
Number 41, for purposes of identification only. 41 again is, this is Krikorian Buscaino, and this is for funding for tree trimming, small asphalt repairs, illegal sign removal, spot cleaning, street sweeping. Great. That's exactly what we'd like in Hollywood. But our person, Mr. Cassetti's not here. He's at a campaign kickoff at this very moment.
On the item.
HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that brings us where? Item 40. Mr. Walsh? I think he has a minute left. And this is on item 46.
John Walsh, HollywoodHighlands.org, or for yesterday's blog, go to thefrontpageonline.com. This is Mr. Alarcon, funding support for community programs and groups in District 7. You've done an excellent job, Mr. Alarcon. We're going to be sorry to see you leave. But that's the way it is, and others will leave too. You are a bright spot, and you do support community programs and groups in your area as compared to 13 with Garcetti. HollywoodHighlands.org, thefrontpageonline.com.
Okay, let's vote on this, members. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that brings us to item 49, I believe.
Yes, sir.
There are
Item
no
49.
cards, so I'd like to defer to Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Parks had some questions that I believe have been resolved, and so that matter can be voted on now in open session.
Yes, Mr. Parks? Give me a... Okay. All right, members, let's... don't you need to read it, Mr. City Attorney?
Before council is authorization to pay $2,374,347.14 as of today in payment of judgment of the of the case reference in the agenda, plus a daily interest accrual of $402.10 until payment is made.
Okay, on this item, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, where does that bring us, Mr. City Clerk?
Mr. President, that brings us to Special 1. I believe the City Attorney will speak to the findings.
Would you please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the posting of today's agenda, the Metro Board and the Federal Transportation Authority have approved funds for lease of city property at First and Alameda for the Regional Connector Light Rail Project. Due to Metro's need to occupy this site before April 30th and due to the City Council's recess until March 20th, there is an immediate need to act today to authorize several actions that must occur before Metro can occupy the site. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Okay, let's vote on the findings. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, now that's before us. Let us open the roll, close the roll. Wait a minute. Mr. Parks, are you waving at me? Okay. Because it was... Okay. Anyway, let's open the roll. Oh, there's a card. Where is the card? Arnold Sachs. Thank you, Johnson, for reminding me. Mr. Sachs, sorry about that.
Yes, thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. Part of my concern with this whole foolish procedure with the downtown connector is that this project is probably 30 years in the making, ever since the Blue Line should have been continued from Long Beach to Pasadena, and the games that MTA and the city and the county played by changing the name and the color so people wouldn't associate the Blue Line portion from Union Station to Pasadena with the Blue Line portion from Long Beach to 7th and Figueroa, and say, well, why do we have a gap here? But it goes back to the part where it says this portion of land will be used for the tunnel boring machines. Because I believe that when the tunnel boring machines were used for the subway, those machines were not, once they're used, they're buried underground. And they cost approximately $10 million. Now, this project is less than 2 miles long. And by tunnel boring machines, I'm assuming, and that I know they take that chance, that you mean more than one machine, which probably could be 2. So let's say 2. So 2 at $10 million is $20 million investment to dig a tunnel 1.8 million miles long and then bury 2 more machines alongside the machines that were used to build the red line and the purple line. Now, we've heard your concerns about Measure R and local return Measure R funding. Has anybody expressed a concern about the fact that $20 million for tunneling machines will be buried alongside a couple other tunneling machines in the city of L.A. underground? Thank you.
All right, let's prepare to vote on this. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, that brings us where, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Consider them posted and referred.
The desk is clear.
Okay, now we'll go to general public comment, and then we'll move into announcements. All right. Yeah. John Walsh, Michael Carry-On, Michael Waterman Hubman.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org right here. Okay, the LA Times published a poll on last Saturday, said that Prop A was going to win by 10 points. 11 points, rather. It lost by 10 points. 21% margin of error. Built into the LA Times poll was a 4.4 margin of error. It was a lying push poll. It was garbage. Garcetti right now, he spoke about it last night, is at a kickoff fundraising event, not here, at Vandy Camp, a former bakery, which is a charter school. I want his money. I want an explanation for why he's not here. Mr. Zine, do not be worried about what happened yesterday. And I want to tell you why. Because people foolishly voted for Galperin because of the word, they thought they were voting for Galpin Motors. They got all that, and I'm not being facetious about this. I'm telling you, people just see, it has a very good reputation. You know, Galpin Motors has an incredible reputation. Mr. Bulkman, it has nothing to do with it, and I suggest that you have a meeting with Kerry Braisman and get his endorsement. John Choi for City Council in 13, definitely. Cindy Gruhl, the best of a bad lot. We want Cindy Gruhl. Anybody but Garcetti means we all must swallow hard and vote for Gruhl. And I want to point out that Prop A's overwhelming defeat is the going away present to the mayor of the city of Los Angeles. All he can do now is crawl into bed with the next woman he can find. HollywoodHighlands.org. We kicked his ass out of town.
Okay, John. Okay, John. Arnold, oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, guys. I apologize on that. I called for Michael Carry-On. Then I've got Michael Waterman Hubman. Then Arnold, are you here? Arnold Sachs? Okay, and Daniel Jones. So, Michael, then come on.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Waterman Hubman. I'm a human rights, homeless rights, and right to share food activist. Last time I was up here, I ran out of time. I was speculating on why the political class would want to harass people who share food with the homeless. My best guess is greed. Poverty and homelessness are commonly viewed by some who are not similarly afflicted as messy and unsightly. A sight of homeless people lining up to receive a charitable meal makes it hard to convince oneself or others that all is well in their area of expertise. It seems that worry over property value and commerce override their concern for the poor. On June 2nd, 2010, government caused the shutdown of the Town Avenue Soup Line, which had served nutritious meals 6 days a week for 5 years running. This action by government jump-started the Los Angeles-based Right to Share Food movement and the Right to Share Food Coalition, of which I am a founding member. Councilmember Perry was the proximate cause of the shutdown of the Town Avenue Soup Line. June 2nd is Right to Share Food Day in Los Angeles. The Right to Share Food movement holds the moral high ground. For example, look to Matthew 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats. I liken those who would hinder the sheep in their strive to help feed the hungry and the poor as hyper goats. Don't be a goat. Don't be a goat. Biblical passages aside, the Right to Share Food movement will be there to call out this mean-spirited behavior at every opportunity. Please don't be a goat. Congratulations to Eric Garcetti and Wendy Gruhl on making their runoff in the mayor's race.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So if I can get Mr. Sachs, and then we have Dorota Starr, followed by Daniel Jones. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Very quickly, I appreciate the city attorney's actions in clarifying when I venture off the topic. But here's a concern I have for the city attorney and his office. The city council, in its efforts to balance the budget, looked at privatizing the zoo. They put out requests for proposals. They went through a whole set of negotiations for a year. And then it was discovered that, whoops, city employees cannot be governed by outside companies, agencies, whatever. So what was the city's remedy for that problem? Let's privatize the convention. So thinking, well, the convention is a city agency. Doesn't that fall under the same auspices of the city charter? And I would think yes. So I'm asking the city attorney, he was in city council chambers when that motion was put before the city council. Of course, none of the city council members who have been involved in all these labor negotiations over the course of their terms in city council remembered the charter amendment clause that doesn't allow city employees to work for private companies. But you would have hoped the city attorney would. Didn't know about it. But he's diligently aware when the public goes off topic. Going off topic very quickly, Mr. Englander, in today's discussion regarding the streetcar, mentioned that Prop 1P's funding has sunsetted. He also mentioned Prop 1P funding generated $140 million for the city. Where'd it go? He mentioned ARA fundings are no longer here. Can the city council legitimately show projects that were completed with ARA funding? I don't think so.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Starr? Daniel Jones? Wayne Spindler? Yvonne Michelle Autry? Henry Marine?
Okay, thank you again. Just for the record, with this New World Ordered international policing and the Homeland Security money that you have allocated in your budget, I want to keep it on your record that I, as a stakeholder and citizen of downtown Los Angeles, oppose and object to this money being used in government cover-ups for the illegal and covert civilian experiments that are being used involving laser beams, microwaves, microchips, shot sprays, germ warfare. I object to the illegal entries of my residents, the surveillance, harassments, incriminations, character assassinations that ensue in this process of manipulation, mass manipulation, population control techniques in controlling the populace. And I object to the incrimination and the character assassinations of those who are difficult to control, i.e. the problematic troublemakers that still speak for themselves and think for themselves. I object to these witch hunts and science projects and the torture that ensues, which is hidden by and large perpetrated by the police and paramilitary in controlling, manipulating, coercing the populace. These are hidden techniques which have been documented since there's people like myself who are aware of these ways of influencing conscious behavior are publishing. So this is one way of documenting these debilitating and disabling injuries that are being caused by these wavelengths. Again, in torturing, in doing research on the population. So I want this on the record, so you don't use your money for this homeland security incrimination of people who are labeled as terrorists simply because we utilize our freedom of...
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, you didn't fill out a card? Okay, well, that's why I'm checking with you. Okay, so why don't you come up after Mr. Marine?
Yes, last week the mayor informed us that management screwed up. They failed to inform civilian employees in temporary and permanent positions that they were government employees. Consequently, they failed to have them sign an oath of loyalty to the state and federal constitution, and that they would have to serve as disaster service workers. You know, and this came to a real shock of these people that are in so-called hiring hole employees. They thought they were working under a collective bargaining agreement with maybe somebody from Getty Oil or something, you know, was paying the bills. So also in relation to that, now that everybody knows they're not working under a collective bargaining agreement and that they are government employees, now they're expecting participation in LACERs under temporary the position the term is interim employment positions. Workers can only be in positions covered by CalPERS or LACERs for a maximum of 1,000 hours before they have to be brought into the pension plan. And as you see, you're way overdue. So this ongoing mistakes by management personnel has led us into the need for the recovery of funds from government employees, from union pension benefit plans, and have it rolled over to LACERs or PERS for the benefit of the government employees in the city of LA serving in permanent and temporary interim positions under PSTs, permanent, seasonal, or temporary positions under 18.5.
Thank you, Mr. Marine. Mr. Ramirez. And Ms. Hall, did you fill out a card for general public comment? Well, you know, during general public comment, you're not allowed to speak on items that were on the agenda.
I understand. Thank you.
You go ahead.
Thank you. Horrifyingly, I found several dirty little secrets compounding to the already pre-existing ones. The LAPD, Latino Hispanic gangbangers in uniform, have conspired with the criminal illegal felons and violent street gangbangers in furthering the Latino Hispanic criminal empire against the United States of America and the cities, primarily in your LAPD Rampart Police Station, which also include enemy combatants, African Americans, Caucasians, and Asians in uniform. Simply put, there is widespread criminal collusion between the LAPD Latino Hispanic gangbangers in uniform and the non-Latino dirty rogue officers in uniform. This is nothing more than sectarian groups within the LAPD and in all law enforcement agencies and with their own deadly agendas. They are inciting violent and deadly riots within each community that are already percolating with gangbanging mayhem and mob lynchings. This LAPD criminal combatants in uniform have deliberately and selectively targeted legal law-abiding citizens and military veterans and used them as bait by denying them equal protection under the law, the due process rights, falsifying any and all police reports, which is a felony, and obstructing all justice by playing the sick and twisted head games and calling the victims crazy. These criminal LAPD gangbanging pigs from Rampart are I. Chaparro, V. Villanueva, J. Gutierrez, P. Espinoza, W. Neal, A. Ramos, Grant, Kepler or Kepper, Hendricks, Gomez, Guzman, J. Elder, Luis Ford, Sergeants M. Gamble, Sergeant J. Min, Sergeant P. Gillen, and Sergeant J. Sanchez, and Sergeant Acosta, and Sergeant Williams. The LA City Attorney is also culpable. They need to be fired and or deported stat with no pension benefits because they have committed unethical standards. In other words, they are unethical pussies. And having said that, oh, come on, man. Enforce the law, will you please? City Attorney, enforce the law. Be like Jan Brewer. And
Thank you. Thank you, except for the last part. Ms. Hall.
Yeah. I'm wondering, as a property owner in LA County who pays property taxes every single year but is not allowed to work the property or make any money off of it, what do we do? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hall. Okay, Mr. Clerk, I assume we're now on the section where we do announcements, correct? Members and announcements. Mr. Labange.
Rio Bridge, which is the bridge from the historic Grand City Hall over to City Hall East. There's an exhibit for the next month by the Greater Los Angeles Press Photographers Association. If you get a chance, walk over and enjoy it. And also this Saturday at the Los Angeles Public Library, Richard J. Riordan Public Library at 5th and Flower, LA in Focus. There'll be tales from the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, which was once a great newspaper. Many of their staff will come back to discuss the photography, the work, the efforts of the Herald-Examiner, which was an evening paper. And you remember the Herald, don't you, Richard? The Herald-Examiner? Remember the Herald-Examiner? Well, it is an evening paper. I sold it on the street corner of Hyperion in Scotland. And I remember the headlines: Dodgers signed bonus baby Willie Crawford for $100,000. And Bud Ferrillo's Steam Room, remember that? Dennis I, did you sell it or deliver it? He did both, sell it and deliver it. So it'll be fun this Saturday. If you want to come, the public's invited at 2 o'clock at the Taper Auditorium, Central Library.
Thank you, Mr.
President. Mr. President, thank you for all your efforts and help.
Thank you. Mr. Krikorian for an announcement?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, earlier today we voted to transfer some funds to support Department of Transportation traffic officers beginning on March 23rd because of the closure of Coldwater Canyon to replace a nearly 100-year-old water main. And so I just wanted to remind all members, as well as members of the public, that traffic is going to be severely impacted in the entire south part of the San Fernando Valley, as well as the other end of Coldwater on Sunset and surrounding areas from March 23rd for about 5 weeks until that project is completed. Monday through Saturdays, from 8:30 a.m. until 7 p.m., Mondays through Fridays, and 8:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. on Saturdays, Coldwater Canyon will be entirely closed between Ventura Boulevard and Mulholland. Starting this Saturday, there will be no left turns allowed off of Coldwater onto Ventura Boulevard in either directions. So beginning this Saturday, we're already going to start feeling the traffic impacts of that project. I want to thank Mr. Labange and Mr. Koretz for working with me to ensure that we are minimizing the impacts of this essential infrastructure project as much as possible through use of DOT officers and otherwise to try to mitigate these traffic impacts, but there's no way that the impacts are going to be eliminated. So I just want to urge everyone in the public, avoid Coldwater Canyon starting March 23rd and avoid any unnecessary trips through this area because it is going to be severely impacted.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Announcements? Okay, if everyone in the council chambers would please rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Labange.
Thelma Ginsler lived to be 101. A wonderful person. I don't play cards, but I visited her at the senior center in Hollywood just last year. Took pictures. She was preceded in death by her husband, Harold. They hiked every day in Griffith Park. A couple, same height, and walked up to Mount Hollywood. Were wonderful people. They lived on the Rowena Avenue section of the Los Feliz district. We want to adjourn in memory of Thelma Ginsler. They had no children, but they had millions of friends.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Parks?
Thank you very much. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Graham William Armstrong, who was born in Chicago, Illinois, December 1952 and passed away in Los Angeles in March 1st, 2013 from cardiac arrest as a result of pneumonia and kidney disease. He spent his childhood in Boonville, North Carolina, where he developed his appreciation of music, soaking up the sounds from his aunt's jukebox at the Armstrong Bar. Graham returned to Chicago to attend Austin High School and earned a bachelor's degree in radio, television, and film at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb County. While in college, he played Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity and proved to be an effective leader, rising to the rank of pole mark. His music career started in Chicago at WBMX, where he impressed the program director with his encyclopedic knowledge of music history and earned an air shift on the top R&B station in the city. Eager to explore his new opportunity, Graham made his mark at WTMP in Tampa, Florida, and several small stations in the Southeast. He returned to Chicago, where he hired with WGCI as a midday air personality and was promoted to music director and ultimately program director. The sunny skies of California were calling, and Graham moved to Los Angeles to concentrate on his writing. He was a co-publisher of the trade magazine, the R&B Report, and editor of Jam's section of Hit magazine. In '92, he accepted an opportunity of a lifetime to work with one of his musical heroes, Prince, as the vice president, general manager of Paisley Park label, where he oversaw the operations of the label as well as the careers of several groups under that label. In '94, he returned to Los Angeles as the vice president, national radio editor of the Urban Network magazine. Although he loved music business, the industry had changed with the advent of the 21st century, and Graham found that he could use his talents and connections in a totally different capacity. He secured a position as the entertainment director of the South Coast Botanical Gardens, where he successfully coordinated large events, weddings, and video shoots. He was an avid collector of 1962 Chevys, vintage gramophones, and Coca-Cola paraphernalia. He also was a frequent traveler to Brazil to attend his annual Sao Paulo festival. He's survived by his siblings, Sherman, Patricia, Lee, James, Thomas, Geraldine, Sylvia, and a host of family members. His memorial service is scheduled for this coming Saturday, March 9th.
Thank you. Mr. Zine?
Thank you. This is for Kathleen Lou Vossbinder, passed away March 2nd. Kathleen Lou Vossbinder was born in Roscoe, California, July 18, 1927. Her death was preceded by the loss of her husband of 53 years, Willard Lloyd Vossbinder, who was a retired Los Angeles Police Department captain. I had the honor of working for Captain Vossbinder in the early 60s, just a wonderful captain with the LAPD. Kathleen worked at Weber Aircraft, Bank of America, and Hubbard Elementary School. She was a devoted wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Her hobbies were sewing, spending time with her family, and playing her musical instruments, especially her organ. In addition, she traveled the world with her husband and the Shrine Club. Daughters survived by Nancy Lebron and Glenda Ray Lombardo, husband Ray Lombardo, LAPD retired lieutenant. Granddaughters Kelly Marie Bates, husband John, Gina Diane Blades, husband Brian, and Leanne Nicole Braun, who works in my office. Great-grandsons John Raymond Bates and Jack William Bates. May she rest in peace, Kathleen Lou Vossbinder.
Thank you. Other adjourning motions? Other adjourning motions? Okay, members, I just want to announce that there will be no council this Friday. Some people may be under the impression, so I guess what I'm doing, informing the public. The council will be on recess. Our next council meeting will be Tuesday, March 19th. This meeting is adjourned.